Our story transports us to the 8th floor of the tower, a place known as the Plains of Extinction. Through the heavy snow, an army of fully armored knights marches in formation. At the head of this troop is a man in a winter coat, guiding his soldiers through the biting cold. He then turns to his men, raising an arm to deliver a speech. This is Kazuki Kyojo, Guildmaster of the Blue Zone, and his objective is to take down the floor's guardian. He warns everyone not to let their guard down. If they can't overcome this, the 9th floor will be an impossible feat. Just then, Kazuki spots another group appearing on the horizon and remains on high alert. Staring intently, he remarks that they've finally decided to show up at the designated meeting point. Approaching them is the famous Blue Eyes Guild, a group filled with powerful members. Leading the charge is their leader, Subaru Narukami, the master of the number 1 ranked guild. Kazuki then approaches the newcomer, greeting him with a friendly smile. The protagonist apologizes for the delay, but Kazuki insists he was actually the first to arrive. They note that the Miram Alliance will likely only appear for the leftovers, especially with Subaru present. The masked man then grips his dagger, remarking that if they want scraps, he can certainly provide them. Yet he surprises Kazuki by passing him a mysterious item during their handshake. The object is, in fact, a legendary item featuring a red gem that glows intensely. This item, the Archangel's Blessing, can restore 50% of one's fatigue instantly. Subaru states his intention to succeed in the raid, but offers this to his friend just in case. The protagonist also seizes the opportunity to ask if Kazuki would consider returning to Blue Earth. He suggests the blonde man can return the item at that very moment, revealing he possesses an identical one. Kazuki falls silent, processing his friend's invitation to rejoin their former guild. Subaru then adds that if he chooses not to return, he can keep the item as a gift. But suddenly a potent energy erupts from the ground, startling both leaders. The blonde man realizes the guardian is here, while the masked hero hadn't expected it to show up so quickly. Emerging from the snow, the gigantic guardian of the 8th floor finally appears, ready for a fight. Seeing the beast, Kazuki bellows for all his men to prepare for the impending battle. The monster is a sea dragon Hydra, a colossal fiend with multiple razor-sharp heads. Fearlessly, the protagonist confronts the monster, calling it an ugly wretch with a mocking tone. In that instant, his hand begins to radiate a golden aura as a shiver runs down his spine. Bolts of lightning course through his body as he informs the monster that this will be its final day. The Hydra then fixes its crimson eyes on our hero, preparing its assault. Immediately after, all the creature's heads part their jaws, readying a breath attack. Kazuki shouts in panic for everyone to take cover, but Subaru calmly states it isn't necessary. This leaves the blonde man confused, watching his friend stand before the attack completely unfazed. The Hydra at last unleashes a powerful energy beam toward the group of adventurers. Our hero, however, dashes forward at blinding speed, leaving a trail of lightning in his wake. With his energy, he effortlessly slices the creature's attack in half. The blast is utterly dissipated, leaving the giant dragon stunned by what just transpired. Kazuki shields himself with his cape, awestruck by the power his old friend now wields. The protagonist's guildmates cheer for him, though one complains he arrived too late to join the action. A girl in the group asks what he gave Kazuki, but the protagonist tells her she'll find out later. He then turns to his team, asking if they are all prepared for combat. Subaru draws his sword, proclaiming it's time to slay the dragon and finally clear this wretched floor. At his command, the Blue Eyes Guild charges the Hydra, while Kazuki's soldiers can only watch. The blonde man observes them from a distance, remarking on their closeness, right before another group emerges. A man approaches the Miram Alliance leader, informing him that the soldiers are in position. Kazuki overhears their leader wondering aloud if they should also begin to move. In response, one of the Alliance's hooded members wishes the group good luck in the battle. The Blue Zone Guildmaster's expression turns serious, a hint of suspicion in his eyes. Meanwhile, the healer on Subaru's team readies herself to support her comrades. The protagonist's guild charges forward with full force, each member targeting a different head of the Hydra. The camera focuses on one of the creature's heads, poised to snap at anyone in its path. A girl leaps to attack, but her partner warns her against rushing in recklessly. He proceeds to block an attack from one of the Hydra's heads with his dagger, facing it up close. The young man then severs the monster's head with ease, declaring the fight a piece of cake for them. Another member freezes one of the heads, complaining about how stressful the battle is. A different member, Toshiya, appears with a grin and challenges his colleague to a competition. He proposes a wager to see who can inflict more damage on the floor boss. Toshiya then unleashes a powerful red energy blast, causing the creature's head to explode. Another comrade accepts the wager, stating the loser buys dinner as he prepares his own strike. He unleashes a blue energy slash that completely obliterates another of the creature's heads. The healer apologizes to Chino as one of the Hydra's heads nearly struck her, but Chino reassures her, telling her comrade to maintain the barrage of attacks. With that, the girl conjures an enormous pink energy barrier to shield everyone on the field. In that moment, Kazuki appears behind the healer, calling out Chino's name. He taunts her, asking if she can possibly block the attack he's about to unleash. The girl is in total shock, her mouth wounded, unable to process what is happening. Kazuki grabs her from behind with a dagger, stating their problem is their overwhelming arrogance. Desperately, the girl screams for Subaru, who observes the scene with a grim expression. The traitor releases the girl, who crumples to the ground, drained of strength from her injury. The blonde man stands before her with a victorious smirk, his weapon still in hand. Our protagonist's eye flares with an intense blue light, showcasing his unbridled fury. Kazuki glares at the masked man, warning him that this is no time to look away from the main fight. The protagonist wonders why Kazuki would do this just as the Hydra materializes behind him. A system message appears, stating he was chosen by the tower for a purpose. This was the very first message all players received, urging them to climb the tower and prepare. No one knew if it was a trial or a blessing. The truth behind the message remained a mystery. They simply followed the directive, attempting to reach the tower's summit, a place never before attained. People from countless worlds and different dimensions gathered, each with their own mission. Back in the present, the remains of the Hydra's heads lie scattered across the snowy ground. The forms of Subaru's guildmates are strewn across the snow-covered ground as well. The protagonist gasps for air, utterly spent after the long and arduous battle against the monster. He laments that his friends didn't heed his warnings, and that they finally vanquished the impossible beast. Gazing at their fallen forms, he says he never gave them permission to perish in the fight. With profound sadness, he calls them fools for sacrificing themselves in such a needless manner. A system window flashes, warning he is poisoned and his fatigue level is critically high. The system also alerts that he will be done for if his fatigue reaches 100, and he wonders what they would say. He then glares at Kazuki and his approaching soldiers, demanding to know why he did all this. A malicious smile is the traitor's only response as the masked man screams his name in raw anger. Kazuki draws near, revealing that for 10 long years, he has been working toward this very day. He explains this was the only way to overcome him, that he needed to create a diversion. The blonde man adds that our hero's precious guildmates would have interfered with his plans. With fury blazing in his eyes, he shouts that Subaru has no idea how everything he received was a torment. It's for that reason, the blonde man says, that he chose him above all else. That's the entire story. The traitor then remarks it's a shame things came to this, but the end is drawing near. With a smirk, he tosses the item into the air, declaring he no longer needs to return it. He turns and tells the protagonist not to be sad, assuring him he will go down as a hero in history. With a mocking smile, the masked man retorts that even at the end, he only hears what he wants to hear. Kazuki then turns and departs with his army, leaving the protagonist utterly alone. The hero knows that at this point, his life is beyond saving and accepts his fate. But that doesn't mean he's just going to surrender and go down without a fight. Kazuki is stunned by the stubbornness of his former friend, who refuses to give in. The protagonist then rises, holding a legendary item that generates an incredibly powerful wind. The traitor wonders aloud how it still has charges, to which Subaru shouts he would never tell him. The system window indicates that 4 uses remain. He can use it 4 more times. In that moment, he realizes 4 survivors from his beloved Blue Eyes Guild are still standing. At least they managed to pull through, and our hero uses the item to whisk them away from the scene. A powerful gust of wind carries the 4 remaining members far from the battlefield's danger. Kazuki panics, yelling for his men to pursue them and ensure no one escapes. The Muram Alliance mobilizes to capture the fleeing survivors. Its purpose served, the legendary fan drops into the snow as the protagonist braces himself. A confident smile spreads across his face as the masked man declares they're not going anywhere. Raising an arm crackling with lightning, he warns that everyone there will stay with him until the very end. His fatigue climbs to 95, severely restricting his ability's duration. Yet he activates his transformation, unleashing a brilliant explosion of golden energy across the field. Kazuki glares at him, calling him a stubborn wretch for continuing to fight in such a state. The hero then drives a dagger into himself and his fatigue climbs to 96. He doesn't know what kind of reward they were promised, but he hopes they're ready to pay the price. With his sword in hand, he warns them they must be prepared to pay with their very lives. From this point forward, no one leaves without his say-so. One of the soldiers, terrified by the situation, cries out that at this rate, they're in serious trouble. Seeing no other choice, the soldiers decide it's all or nothing and charge the hero. The protagonist begins to battle multiple enemies at once in a truly intense clash. He thinks to himself that, ordinarily, these aren't the types he'd lose to in a fair fight. But with his body pushed to its absolute limit, he struggles to block the enemy's assaults. He shatters the spear, thinking that if Kazuki were to join the fray, the outcome would be drastically different. His fatigue rises to 97. He realizes the problem now is his crippling exhaustion. The masked man knows he can't drag this fight out much longer as he faces a new opponent. With a swift movement, he dodges and counters the soldier who tried a sneak attack. He takes a blow to the face, and his fatigue climbs to 98, pushing him closer to his end. Even wounded, he refuses to yield and retaliates with all the strength he has left. Suddenly, the protagonist feels a sharp pain in his chest and understands what just happened. A soldier had exploited an opening, managing to pierce the hero's chest with a spear. The weapon clatters to the ground, covered in red liquid as the protagonist is gravely wounded. One soldier celebrates victoriously, shouting that they finally managed to take down Subaru Narukami. But the masked man grabs him, asking with a chilling smile just who he said they had taken down. With that, he unleashes a blast of lightning that strikes all surrounding soldiers simultaneously. Kazuki's men cry out in agony as they are completely scorched by the golden energy. One by one, the soldiers collapse, utterly overwhelmed by the protagonist's fury. To everyone's astonishment, he simply rips the spear from his chest as if it were nothing. After a tremendous effort, the protagonist finally collapses to his knees, drained. The soldiers, relieved, celebrate the hero's fall, wondering if he's finally been defeated. Kazuki stares at the form of his former friend, calling him a monster for all that he's done. The blonde man then reflects on the masked man's downfall, thinking his era ended so unceremoniously. Our hero's fatigue hits 99, and the system warns that his end is imminent. But Subaru rises again, stating that Kazuki, of all people, should have known better. Leaning on the spear, he declares that in the end, the story was never going to finish that way. With a final battle cry, the protagonist proclaims that when all is said and done, he is the one who always wins. His eyes blaze with power as he prepares for one last desperate attack. Kazuki clutches the item he received, remarking that his life is saved, and offers his condolences. But his eyes widen in pure disbelief as he sees the spear hurtling toward him. The weapon strikes him squarely, and the traitor cannot believe this is happening. In his final moments, Subaru thinks to himself that he was the one who won this confrontation. His consciousness fades, replaced by a torturous light and a strange scent in the air. The camera pans to a trash can lid clattering onto the pavement of a dark alley. Suddenly, a young man emerges from the trash can, utterly bewildered by the situation. He glances around and, with a look of disgust, wonders if this place is the underworld. A status screen materializes, informing him his name is now Subaru Hozoi and he is at level 1. All at once, a splitting headache hits him, and blue lightning zaps across his entire body. A few people appear and taunt him, saying that 20 years ago, Subaru Narukami was a total freak of nature. The protagonist is completely floored by this information and has no idea what's going on. He wonders how he could have perished 20 years ago, then realizes this body isn't his own. In sheer desperation, the young man questions if this is all just some horrible nightmare or an illusion. In his daze, he loses his balance and tumbles out of the trash can, knocking a strange device to the ground. Sprawled in the filthy alley, he stares at the mysterious object that landed on the pavement beside him. The young man picks up the device, recognizes it as a player kit, and considers how to use it. Without wasting another second, he uses the device to search for his former guild, the Blue Eyes. The results indicate that the Blue Zone became its successor, carrying on the legacy of the Blue Eyes. Seeing a photo of the traitor, he wonders in disbelief Kazuki actually survived his final attack. He stares at the image of his old friend, who is now older and sports an eye patch. A memory from the past surfaces, Kazuki calling to him, saying he wanted to leave the Blue Eyes. Our hero was taken aback by the news, and the blonde man had asked him to be the one to tell the others. Kazuki offered no clear explanation, only saying that Subaru would understand the reason in time. His friend had reassured him, promising that even after leaving the guild, he would remain his shadow. Years later, he founded the Blue Zone Guild, the very name he had once jokingly used for that shadow. This implies that even after 2 decades, no one has successfully cleared the 8th floor of the tower. Suddenly, he spots a photo of a building and learns it is his memorial, constructed in his honor. Stunned, the young man rushes to the site and confirms the building is indeed a memorial dedicated to him. He has to admit, the place is far more impressive than he ever could have imagined. Inside, behind a glass display, he finds his old, iconic mask, the one he wore into battle. Exploring his own memorial, he sees a massive hologram of himself being admired by crowds of people. The protagonist wonders what the point is of everyone remembering him after all this time. He also questions who orchestrated all of this and for what specific purpose. Gazing at the projection of his former self, he still can't comprehend the reason for any of it. A holographic recording then begins to play, a voice declaring that he was a role model for all. The voice continues, stating he was the guild's hero and the man who came closest to the tower's summit. The hologram then explains that, together with his comrades, they created the memorial in his memory. Our protagonist is utterly dumbfounded, unable to believe what he's hearing. The holographic voice then reveals it was they who established this memorial hall. Seething with anger, the young man grits his teeth as the full revelation finally sinks in. The hologram reveals Kazuki, who proclaims that Subaru and the Blue Eyes are no more. The traitor announces that the Blue Zone has inherited their spirit, and our hero screams for him to be quiet. He yells that if Kazuki wasn't satisfied with his demise, he will gladly live up to his expectations. The recording asserts they will never return, but the protagonist promises that he can just wait. The video concludes with the blonde man saying they will never be forgotten, as the hero remembers everything. Filled with rage, he punches the hologram, vowing to rewrite this memory from the ground up. With grim determination, he swears he won't let the traitor get away with this lie a second time. The young man then turns, promising not to squander the second chance he's been given. But as he exits the building, he bumps into a boy who falls to the ground, crying out in pain. Concerned, he rushes to the boy's side, asking if he's alright while helping him to his feet. The protagonist freezes in complete shock when he sees the boy he just knocked over. The boy then picks up a mask from the ground, identical to the one he wore in his past life. Just then, the boy's parents arrive, asking if Minato is okay as our hero helps him up. To his amazement, he notices the boy's parents are also wearing replicas of his mask. Utterly bewildered, he backs away from the family, trying to make sense of what is happening. The young man rubs his eyes hard, still unable to believe what he's witnessing. With a bead of sweat tracing down his face, he remains stunned by the bizarre scene before him. It's then he realizes that every single person in the memorial is wearing a mask identical to his old one. At that moment, he recalls Kazuki's words, saying it was a shame it had come to this. The memory continues with the traitor saying he would remain a hero in history even in his passing. The protagonist finally grasps what his former friend meant by those words back then. With his eyes glowing with rage, he grinds his teeth and whispers the traitor's name with pure hatred. Without a second thought, the young man begins sprinting through the hall, weaving through the crowd. He finally reaches a large mourning altar adorned with his portrait and countless flowers in his honor. Looking at it, he wonders if this is all just a performance for Kazuki to steal his glory. The truth finally dawns on him, and his eyes widen at the terrible, shocking reality of the situation. Suddenly, a blue light begins to shine brilliantly from among the white flowers on the altar. His gaze is irresistibly drawn to the mysterious glow, and he focuses on the object emitting it. The young man begins shouldering his way through the crowd, trying to get closer to the altar to see the object. But the crowd grows irritated, shouting for him to be careful and wait his turn in line like everyone else. He finally breaks through and kneels before the altar of white flowers. The young man then reaches into the blossoms and retrieves the glowing object that was hidden there. To his surprise, he sees a luminous chrysanthemum flower and recognizes the name Shigeru Asajiri. Far away atop a skyscraper, two hooded figures observe the city from above. One of them comments that they've made it through another year without any major incidents. The other chides him for being so nonchalant, reminding him they narrowly avoided an encounter with the Blue Zone. The hooded man then wonders if holding the memorial ceremony every year is truly necessary. A man with white hair cuts him off, stating that you can never be too careful. He reveals his face, saying that perhaps Subaru will notice the flowers he offered at the memorial. The hooded figure asks if he believes the boy is still alive, but the white-haired man is uncertain. He remarks that Kazuki will likely find them before they can find the protagonist. Angrily, the hooded figure exclaims that if Subaru were alive, they wouldn't have just stood by. The scene cuts to a gorgeous sunset, with numerous birds soaring freely across the orange sky. Back in the present, our hero gasps for breath, the chrysanthemum flower clutched in his hands. He wonders if the girl he knew in his past life could really still be alive. Flower in hand, the young man starts running through the forest, his mind racing to process the information. He clutches the flower tightly, calling out Shigeru's name with a heart full of hope. The scene then shifts to the simple room that the body's previous owner had used. The protagonist searches for information on the blue eyes but finds no results on his device. Nevertheless, he is certain that Shigeru is alive and resolves to do whatever it takes to find her again. In his room, he reasons that Shigeru must be alive but has been in hiding for 20 long years. He suspects Kazuki is at the root of everything and knows the man wouldn't let anyone escape if he knew the truth. The young man recalls sending 4 comrades away to safety, but doesn't know if all of them survived. He knows that as long as Kazuki is alive, any attempt at contact would be a suicide mission. Glancing out the window, he recognizes his own powerlessness. Forcing his way would only paint a target on his back. His first priority must be to find a way to reclaim his former power. With a look of sheer determination, the young man vows to regain his strength for the sake of his revenge. Drawing on the memories of Subaru Hosoi's body, he finds a sword to begin his training. 2 days later, the tutorial to become a player finally commences and he is prepared. Wielding the sword, he knows that if he can survive this ordeal, he might just have a chance. He believes that as long as they are both alive, a reunion is possible someday. The scene shifts to the tutorial examination hall, where a man stands surrounded by fallen creatures. A bald man with a white mustache named Hugo observes the scene, arms crossed. The participant pants for breath, encircled by the bodies of the goblins he defeated. Hugo approaches the young man, noting that he barely scraped by, but it was sufficient. The instructor then asks if he wants to attempt the next step, leaving the young man confused. A system window explains that for each step an additional goblin appears, offering greater rewards. The young man panics and declines the offer, calling it madness to face 3 at once. He asks if he still passed the test, and in a flash of light his body vanishes from the hall. Hugo laments having to pass a coward like that in his qualification exam. The instructor mentions a certain Isaac, who cleared the 20th step, complaining about the other's lack of potential. He grumbles that the tutorial standards are abysmal, and the quality of rookies has declined sharply. But as he glances at his clipboard, the man notices something that captures his attention. Just then, our protagonist enters the arena, sword in hand, ready for the final test. The instructor reads the young man's name, commenting that it's a heavy burden to bear. He then warns the young man that it will only be worthwhile if he can clear the upcoming test. With everything set, the system finally begins to spawn monsters for our hero's challenge. 2 goblins materialize in the arena. The protagonist's goal is to defeat both creatures. Hugo barely finishes his command for the tutorial to begin when something astonishing happens before his eyes. The protagonist moves in a blur, taking down both goblins in a single fluid motion. The instructor is stunned, wondering if something just whizzed past him in that instant. The monster's bodies hit the floor as the young man returns to his starting position. With a smirk, he thinks that spending 2 days testing this body's limits was the right call. He realizes the body he awoke in is actually quite exceptional for a mere rookie. The system asks if he wishes to proceed to the next step, and he accepts without a moment's hesitation. The young man's decision leaves instructor Hugo utterly dumbfounded by his audacity. Meanwhile, the head of one of the goblins rolls to a stop right at the exam instructor's feet. He looks toward the arena and sees a growing pile of goblin bodies, wondering what is happening. In a flash, we see our hero defeating wave after wave of monsters without pause. The instructor recognizes that the young man isn't just swinging his sword blindly. The instructor perceives that the young man is reading his enemy's movements 2 or 3 steps ahead. He admits to himself that this is beyond mere swordsmanship. Not even he can fight like that. With a confident smile, the protagonist continues his deadly dance against the creatures. Hugo is so astonished he begins to think the young man might be the reincarnation of the legendary Subaru Narukami. Giving the monsters no quarter, he continues his slaughter with precise and fatal strikes. One by one, the goblins fall before his blade as he clears the arena with incredible ease. The system informs him he has cleared step 49 and asks if he wants to face the boss. Though panting and wary, the protagonist accepts the final challenge without any hesitation. At that, the arena floor begins to tremble and fracture with a mysterious bluish energy. The tremor intensifies and the ground shatters completely from a devastating force erupting from below. From the rubble, a gigantic, shadowy hand emerges, much to the exam instructor's horror. Hyuga panics, shouting for him to stop, insisting he's not Narukami and will be finished if he continues. The final boss is a colossal goblin king, flanked by a horde of minions ready for battle. The system warns that, feeling the sacrifices of the other goblins, the king is now enraged. The instructor desperately yells for the young man to give up, calling a fight against the Goblin King madness. Hyuga warns him the difference in stats is immense, and that this fight is a complete suicide mission. The protagonist knows that with his current stats, he can't inflict much damage on the monster. But even with this knowledge, he has absolutely no intention of backing down from the final battle. With a grim expression, he simply refuses to yield and lets his sword drop to the ground. The weapon lies on the stone floor as the hero prepares to fight in an entirely new way. The instructor panics, wondering why he'd drop his weapon and if he's lost his mind. The Goblin King charges with its giant axe, aiming to crush the protagonist with all its might. But the young man throws a small dagger that strikes the monster's belly, dealing minimal damage. The Goblin King halts its attack, looking down at the dagger in its gut with a puzzled expression. The creature glares at the young man with its crimson eyes as a drop of sweat traces down his face. It then sees our hero bending down to pick something up from the ground near the fallen minions. With a confident smirk, the young man reveals several poisoned daggers, asking if the monster is surprised. He then proposes a wager to see which one of them can take down the other first on the battlefield. With an intimidating gaze, he asks if he should turn into a pincushion first with his daggers. Without waiting for an answer, the protagonist begins launching poisoned daggers at the Goblin King. The creature bellows in pain as the daggers strike its eyes, leaving it completely blinded. The Goblin King writhes in agony, trying fruitlessly to pull the daggers from its eyes. The monster is pelted by a shower of daggers that mercilessly pierce its entire body. With its vision gone, the creature swings its axe blindly, hitting nothing but air. Our hero dodges the blow and leaps onto the monster's axe to close the distance. The young man readies himself for the finishing blow while the Goblin King fumbles to find him. A memory from the past surfaces, showing the protagonist practicing dagger throws at a tree. He hurls the dagger with great force but narrowly misses the target, the weapon embedding itself in the tree. A woman named Rina scolds him, telling him he can't throw the daggers that way. Back in the present, our hero recalls the words of his former mentor. She had explained that anything could become a throwing weapon if you understood its center of gravity. Using only a pen, she had hit the dead center of a target with flawless precision. The target was completely obliterated by the impact of the object, which had been thrown with immense force. The Goblin King groans in pain as the poison from the daggers begins to course through its body. Riddled with wounds and poisoned, the giant creature finally starts to lose its strength. The protagonist muses that power is proportional to rotational force and precision to hesitation. With a confident smile, he adds that this was what Miss Rina had taught him long ago. Hyuga watches dumbfounded, thinking he just used a fundamental mechanic to achieve victory. The instructor realizes the young man employed not just swordsmanship, but also expert throwing techniques. Impressed, he calls the young man a genius, then wonders if even that word is sufficient. The Goblin King roars in fury and attempts another attack, but its strength is fading fast. With no more power to fight, the colossal monster finally collapses to the ground, utterly defeated. Our hero then approaches and retrieves his sword from the arena floor. He tells the monster he holds no grudge, but that he must finish the job. With a swift and precise motion, he ends the creature with a decisive strike to the neck. A system window announces he has defeated the Goblin King and successfully cleared the challenge. The system also congratulates him for being the first to ever clear the tutorial's 50th step. Exhausted, he thinks it was only the tutorial and complains about them using such a powerful monster. He levels up, gaining numerous rewards like credits and achievement points. The protagonist is astonished to discover he has unlocked a tutorial shop he's never seen before. Exploring the shop, he sees that item prices range from 5 to 200 points. But suddenly, one particular item at the end of the list catches his eye, leaving him astounded. The young man finds a rare demonic sword that drains HP to boost attack power. The item is incredibly tempting, but his lightning ability also consumes HP, creating a major problem. In the shop, he also finds a holy sword that reduces the user's fatigue build up in combat. The young man is now torn between prioritizing destructive power or safety and endurance. He knows he must spend his initial points wisely, and neither option seems perfect. But while pondering his difficult choice, he notices something new on the tutorial shop screen. The young man discovers he can scroll down to find even more items available for purchase. He then finds a skill called Wedge of Greed, which suppresses negative side effects. The protagonist is in disbelief. He has never encountered a skill with an effect like that before. He realizes the skill could nullify the drawbacks of both the demonic sword and his lightning ability. Without a second thought, he purchases the skill and the demonic sword, deciding it's a risk worth taking. The instructor observes him, commenting that he chose the sword as the young man tests their synergy. Hyuga praises his choice but admits that as a supervisor, he can't comprehend the young man's decision. The instructor questions his choice of skill, as it doesn't appear to be very useful or efficient. The protagonist gets irritated, asking if the old man expects him to explain every single detail. Hyuga becomes serious and demands an explanation, causing the young man to suddenly stammer in formal speech. The old man coughs and lets the matter go, but the protagonist now recalls the name Hyuga from his past. He then remembers that runny-nosed brat grew up to become an exam supervisor. A memory from the past surfaces, showing a young, flustered Hyuga asking him for an autograph. The old Subaru in his mask replies that he doesn't do autographs, leaving the boy deeply disappointed. The boy insists, asking him to just write his name, and introduces himself to the hero as Hiroto. Back in the present, the instructor complains about the young man's etiquette, but he retorts about his bald head. Our hero refuses to answer, instead asking the instructor to maintain the exam's confidentiality. Hyuga gets annoyed, stating that if necessary, he'll teach him the manners he lacks from scratch. The old man then invites him to the Shively Guild, but the protagonist declines and turns to leave. The system asks if he wishes to proceed to the second floor, and the young man accepts, ignoring the invitation. As he begins to teleport, the instructor desperately shouts for him to wait and stop. The old man is disappointed by the young man's attitude, lamenting his stubbornness. The protagonist's body materializes in a new location, finally arriving on the next floor. He arrives on the second floor in the Land of Beginnings, a bustling city filled with vendors. With a serious expression, he surveys the city, thinking that he has finally returned to this place. He reflects on how he was given a chance that almost no one ever gets in life. Now he has a second opportunity to try and do things differently, to do them better. Running through the city, he vows to handle everything in a better way than before. He remembers his fallen comrades and swears vengeance for the tragic end they all met. The protagonist then heads to a private training room to test out his new abilities. Inside, a man asks which floor he came from, and the young man replies that he just arrived. The receptionist then directs him to training room number 1, informing him there's a dummy inside. But to the man's surprise, our hero states he will be using room number 5. The receptionist advises against it, saying it would be a waste of money for him. The young man appreciates the concern but insists on using the room for 30 minutes and pays the fee. The higher the room number, the more challenging the training, with various types of trials. For a new player without proper gear, being looked down upon by others is to be expected. The protagonist ignores the stairs and opens the door to training room number 5. He steps into a place resembling ancient ruins and announces he's ready to begin his training. Without wasting a moment, the young man draws his new demonic sword, preparing to test its power. The weapon recognizes its wielder, and the system announces a temporary boost to his abilities. But the sword drains his HP and MP, and he feels a sharp pain as he grips the blade. The Wedge of Greed activates, resisting the sword's effect and restoring some of his HP. However, the ability fails to fully resist, and his fatigue increases slightly in the process. The sword begins to absorb his HP, and his abilities grow in proportion to the life lost. With blood trickling from his mouth, he wonders if this is his limit and if he can't endure more. But he tells himself it's still within expectations and spends 10,000 credits to upgrade his skill. The Wedge of Greed is now at level 2 and requires 20,000 credits for the next level. The ability now resists the sword's effect with partial success, bringing him some relief. He then drives the sword into the ground with force, testing the new level of power he's attained. The system warns that the weapon is consuming his HP, and his abilities are increasing even further. With a look of pure satisfaction, the young man realizes his plan has finally succeeded. With a single leap, he prepares to unleash the full might of his new and powerful demonic sword. The young man declares it's time to test his strength and begins an intense training session in the room. Meanwhile, at the reception desk, the old employee dozes off, bored, at his wooden table. But suddenly, a deafening noise jolts him awake, and he wonders what could have happened. Sleepily, the man rubs his eyes, questioning if he's still dreaming or if the sound was real. In that moment, he sees the silhouette of our hero exiting the room, leaving a trail of destruction behind. The receptionist remembers the young man and realizes not even 10 minutes have passed since he went inside. Concerned for the young man, the old man hurries to the door of room 5 and knocks to check if everything is all right. When there's no response, he decides to open the door carefully to peek at what happened inside. The man is then left utterly speechless, his jaw dropping at the scene he discovers in the room. The entire place is completely demolished, with weapons and monster parts strewn across the floor. Far away in a room, our protagonist awakens to sunlight streaming across his face. He stretches, wondering how long he slept, as his body still feels incredibly stiff. The young man thinks that if it were a standard cursed sword, he wouldn't have escaped so lightly. He successfully extracted the sword's power, and the physical toll of the training was greatly reduced. Now, however, he's facing a shortage of funds and laments how far he's fallen after everything. A man with cat ears arrives, hosting a live stream about the latest trendy gear for newcomers. A viewer named Alexander donates 1,000 credits, and the streamer celebrates the generous gift. But someone bumps into him, spilling coffee on his face, and he thanks them with biting sarcasm. The protagonist observes the scene from a distance, wondering if that guy is completely unhinged. He then remembers that earning money is the most effective path to revenge and watches the streamer. On his device, he reads news about the PvP era and how 1 in every 3 players now streams. He realizes that's what the man was doing, and suddenly he hears someone call out Subaru's name. A young man with blonde hair and stylish clothes appears, asking if he also managed to ascend. The newcomer approaches, saying it's wild to run into each other here, and asks if he lives nearby. Our hero's body has a strange reaction, and he realizes they did not have a good relationship. The blonde man sits down, telling him not to be ignored, and the protagonist feels an odd sense of unease. With a trembling hand, he replies that he does and has just arrived on the second floor of the tower. With a surprised grin, the young man leans in, commenting on how astonishing that is to him. He then scoffs, saying he never imagined a weakling like him would make it past the tutorial. The blonde man continues his taunts, saying he assumed a goblin would have finished him off in the arena. Our hero's expression turns grim and angry as he finally recalls the young man's name, Isaac. A memory surfaces the body's previous owner being beaten, asking what he did to deserve it. Isaac glares at him with contempt, and the young man shouts for him not to try and calm him with that serious face. The blonde man berates him for not following orders, calling him an empty-headed orphan. The former Subaru cries out that he couldn't do it because the credits he was given weren't enough. Isaac strikes him squarely across the face, shouting at the trash to just obey and not talk back. He then picks up a box, remarking that it suits the young man and will be his new home from now on. With a cruel glint in his eye, he warns him never to leave it, saying he knows what will happen if he disobeys. Back in the present, the hero wonders what kind of fool gets beaten like that, now understanding why he was in the box. Isaac brags about learning a B-rank skill and says he's going to grab a drink because he's thirsty. The protagonist then finishes his own drink and declares that he's leaving, but the blonde man stops him, telling him to buy him a coffee on his way back. Seeing Subaru's hesitation, he grows irritated, calling him as disobedient as ever. With red-rimmed eyes, he asks what's wrong, wondering if his soul was swapped with another. The young man stands up, says he has no credits, and tells Isaac to buy his own coffee. In a serious, intimidating tone, the blonde man simply orders the young man to sit back down. But the protagonist thinks he has no time for this person's vendetta unless it interferes with his own. Just then, our hero's eyes widen in surprise at Isaac's sudden action. The blonde man grabs his arm forcefully, preventing him from leaving their table. With a furious look, he asks if the young man wants to see what happens to runaway trash. But the protagonist stares back, telling him to let go if he knows what's good for him. Everyone in the vicinity watches the two young men's confrontation, unsure of what is happening. Isaac's fury intensifies, and he shouts at him not to be so cocky, calling him by his name. The hero knows he can't make a scene here, creating a disturbance will only make things worse. But suddenly, the blonde man bursts into loud, boisterous laughter, leaving the young man baffled. He tells him not to be startled, that it was just a scare, and calls him a weakling like always. Isaac continues his provocations, saying he must have barely scraped by the tutorial with his skills. Fed up with the conversation, the protagonist stomps hard on the blonde man's foot, irritating him. Isaac threatens him, asking if he knows who his father is, and if he really wants to start a fight here. Isaac then steps back with a smile, telling his friend to be careful on his way back. The hero glares at him with contempt, wondering how he dares call him a friend after everything. An explanation reveals that there are two primary ways for players to grow stronger. The first path is through the trials offered by the tower on each floor. These trials occur in a virtual space. If you're defeated, you only lose credits and progress. The second, more perilous method of growth is hunting monsters outside the safe zone. Hunting monsters in dungeons drastically accelerates growth, but these locations exist in the real world. This means if a player is taken down during a hunt, their end is permanent. Due to the risks, the majority of players avoid hunting in dangerous and lethal dungeons. But our protagonist knows this is the only path to attaining true strength. Sitting beside a defeated orc, he muses that the safer the path, the slower the progress. And the more dangerous the journey, the more quickly he can acquire the power he so desperately desires. With this in mind, he takes out his device to search for information on dungeons. But he ends up stumbling upon a live stream of a player on the 4th floor of the tower. The streamer is named Narukami Subaru and wears a mask identical to the one he used to wear. The young man waves to his 80,000 viewers, announcing he's about to start the floor's trial. The protagonist wonders just how many people are using his name and mask to chase fame. Suddenly, a mission for 20,000 credits pops up on screen, and the streamer thanks the donor. Our hero is shocked to see a mission with such an astronomical reward. Several other high-value missions appear on screen, leaving the young man quite surprised. The streamer expresses his gratitude for the support and promises to clear the trial with the help of the donations. A stark comparison shows the imposter effortlessly raking in money while the real Subaru risks his life. With only 50 credits to his name, he realizes the other guy is making a fortune off his image. Angrily, the young man stares at his device's screen and makes a pivotal decision about his future. He then gets to his feet, preparing to continue his hunt in the perilous orc dungeon. With a smirk, he pulls his sword from the monster's body, saying he has one more job to do. In that moment, a horde of orcs with glowing red eyes emerges, ready for combat. The system announces that the dungeon boss, an orc general, has finally appeared for battle. He faces the monsters, stating that this time, he has something far better than a poison needle. With that, he activates his demonic sword and the skill that boosts his power with minimal risk. The protagonist declares he has no time to waste on trash and kicks one of the monsters in the face. In the blink of an eye, he charges forward, dispatching several orcs with swift, precise attacks. He then leaps toward the boss, who is startled by the sheer speed of the young man's assault. With a determined gaze and eyes glowing red, he prepares for the finishing blow. The system then announces that the Whispering Orc's Nest dungeon has been successfully cleared. Back in his room, he holds his old mask, saying it's time to wear it again. Looking in the mirror, he remarks that he now understands how streamers manage to earn money. He then dons the mask, deciding that if he's going to do this, he'll give it everything he's got. With the mask on his face, he stares at his reflection, ready for whatever comes next. He exits the room, declaring that in the end, he is the one true Subaru Narukami. A notification appears. Narukami Subaru has started a new live broadcast. The scene shifts to a modern office within the Southern Entertainment Company. There, a woman in traditional attire watches something intently on her device. Angrily, she bites her lip hard, her frustration evident at what she's seeing. Suddenly, in a fit of irritation, she forcefully shoves her coworker away. She then calls him an idiot, complaining that not even 5 people can clear that challenge. The man gets up, asking what happened and who this Subikichi she's watching is. He questions if it's another impersonator, and she replies that since the original vanished, the closest imitation wins. The young man complains that everyone is cosplaying as Subaru, and she reminds him it's how they make a living. She grows irritated, saying they know nothing because even players find the tower monotonous. The woman then asks why he abandoned the tower to work in a place like this. In silence, she stares at her device and answers that she quit simply because it was boring. She accuses him of quitting too, but he counters that he left due to lacking a specific skill. He thinks to himself that he only climbed to meet Subaru, and upon seeing something on the screen, he is utterly shocked. The man shouts that he's found an incredible kid, and his partner asks what he's discovered. She points to our hero's live stream, which has only 1 viewer, and her colleague is indignant. He complains that he's supposed to be scouting talent, not watching a stream with 0 viewers. The woman explains that whenever she sees someone in that mask, she can't help but feel a glimmer of hope. She then donates 1,000 credits to the young man, and her colleague drops to his knees, begging forgiveness for his doubt. Back in the dungeon, the system announces the start of the second floor's first trial. His mission is to clear the Dungeon of Beginnings, and he doesn't seem particularly nervous about the challenge. However, he admits the feeling of being watched puts him under a bit of pressure. On screen, a viewer asks which floor he's on and if this is his first time. The masked man then approaches the device and confirms that this is indeed his first challenge. The viewer advises him against streaming if he's unfamiliar with the place, as it could be dangerous. Suddenly, a one-eyed bat monster appears and swoops in to attack our hero. But he snatches it out of the air with one hand, and the creature screeches in pain from the grip. With a swift motion, he crushes the monster, which disintegrates into pieces before him. He earns an achievement point and asks the chat if that posed any problem. The camera reveals the large cavern where he must defeat monsters to proceed. The live stream now has 3 viewers, one of whom praises the protagonist's insane reflexes. The first viewer comments that second-floor streamers tend to give up quickly. The hero appreciates the advice not to be greedy but states that for him, that isn't possible. He then reveals his preference for facing challenges solo, leaving the viewers stunned. As he walks, he thinks that simply using the name Subaru effortlessly draws in an audience. A fish-like monster with legs leaps from the rocks, attempting a surprise attack on our hero. With his demonic sword in hand, he prepares to demonstrate his power to everyone watching. He dispatches the creature with a single slash and declares he'll see just how far he can get alone. The system rewards him with 2 points, leaving the chat bewildered and unsure of what just happened. With no time to rest, a swarm of one-eyed bats descends upon him. With his sword, he cuts down all the monsters in a single precise, spinning arc. One by one, the bats plummet to the ground, completely defeated by the masked man's attack. The chat erupts with surprised comments, and the live stream jumps to 10 viewers instantly. He explains that by paying close attention to the sounds, one can predict where the monsters will emerge. The viewers are skeptical, accusing him of lying and insisting he's not a real beginner. The protagonist then replies that if they're so sure, he'll reveal exactly what he's thinking. The chat continues to taunt him, saying he's just trying to ride on Subaru's coattails. But the masked man is unfazed, stating it's still not enough and that he wants more points. The viewers accuse him of rushing ahead without research, warning he'll run into trouble if he continues. He then arrives in a more open area and is confronted by a massive nest of monsters. Countless one-eyed bats blanket the cavern walls, ready to strike at any moment. A giant crimson eye opens in the darkness and fixes its gaze on our protagonist. Suddenly, all the monsters' eyes snap open, their collective stare locked on the young adventurer. The chat descends into panic, declaring him doomed and saying they'll see him on his next attempt. But a mission for 100 credits appears, offering a reward if he defeats them all. The masked man stares at his device's screen, his expression serious and resolved to win. The chat is split between mockery and astonishment at the mission that has appeared on the stream. He then gives his thanks for the 100 credits and braces for the toughest fight of his life. Back at the office, the agent slams his fist on the table in anger and frustration at what he's witnessing. He cries out in despair, complaining that things were going well until the 6th floor, and now he has failed. The agent apologizes for being loud, but his partner remains glued to her screen. An expression of sheer surprise is on her face, her eyes unable to leave the live stream. The young man asks what's wrong and why she suddenly fell silent for no reason. He becomes desperate, saying he has the money to pay her and that the amount wasn't that large. But the woman cuts him off, and with the stream's light reflecting in her eye, says it has nothing to do with that. She then whispers the name Narukami Subaru, and her colleague is shocked she's still watching the stream. With a look of pure amazement, the agent can't believe what just transpired. The masked man has defeated the entire horde of bats, and the agent wonders how many he took down alone. In a blur, the creature's bodies are sent flying by the slashes of his sword. He continues his onslaught, and the chat can't comprehend how a rookie can fight with such skill. The viewers comment that his explanation is useless, and that he is simply incredible. The hero then sheathes his sword, thinking that interacting with the chat is quite challenging. A viewer reminds him to accept the credits, and he realizes he had forgotten to do so. With that, he fumbles with his device, trying to figure out how to claim his reward. But he seems completely lost, and the chat wonders if he's just spinning in circles. With his hand on his head, he wonders aloud how to accept it, and the chat calls him a streaming novice. The viewer guides him on how to accept the mission, and he finally receives the 100 credits. He thanks her for the help and announces that the next part will be the final challenge of this dungeon. Back at the office, the agent yells again as something flies past the building's window. His partner covers her mouth to stifle a laugh, reminding him that he's the one in hot water. The woman asks if he's ever witnessed anything like it, but her partner says she's overreacting. She gets annoyed at his comment and shouts that of course she's having an exaggerated reaction. Just then, the agent becomes completely smitten, remembering Subaru's performance and wondering if it's fate. She gets carried away, suggesting it could be his reincarnation, and her colleague realizes she's losing her composure. The woman feels lightheaded from the situation and asks what would happen if she closed her eyes right now. Her partner yells at her not to do it and questions if she's already considering recruiting him. He points out the young man is a new and solitary streamer, but she shouts that she's already aware of all that. The agent reminds her the boss will be furious and that she was just placing bets a moment ago. With a determined smile, the woman tells him to just wait and see what happens next. She then turns her full attention back to the screen, watching our hero's broadcast. Back in the dungeon, the protagonist finally reaches the end of his long journey. He stops before a large stone wall and announces that this is the dungeon's conclusion. A secret passage grinds open before him, revealing the path to the next challenge. The masked man enters the room, preparing to face whatever awaits him inside. And there he is, the floor boss, the mighty wolf warrior known as Greg. The creature's eyes snap open, releasing an overwhelming pressure, and the chat warns that he is incredibly strong. The system informs him he must earn the warrior's approval to pass through the gate. The hero explains that the wolf isn't a monster but a guardian who judges the players. Suddenly, a new mission appears, offering a substantial reward to defeat the wolf. Our protagonist is taken aback by the offer of 3,000 credits for the monster's head. The chat comments that Greg isn't a monster to be slain, and that he is a formidable opponent. A system window then identifies the creature as Greg, the wolf warrior and guardian of the second floor. With its glowing eyes, the wolf gazes at our hero, recognizing him as a player of the tower. A memory of the past surfaces, showing someone praising Subaru's incredible swordsmanship. The person explains that even when altering the sword's direction, his breathing and focus never falter. He notes it looks like a single strike because the hero anticipates and calculates every one of the enemy's moves. At this, the black-haired young man grows thoughtful as his companion observes him intently. The silver-haired one calls him annoying when the young man claims he isn't thinking of anything special. In cute, chibi forms, they comment that perhaps it's better not being able to do that, as it isn't normal. Back in the dungeon, he explains that the key in combat is to immediately notice anything out of the ordinary. He also reveals that the one-eyed bats invariably attack head-on, without exception. With this in mind, he knows he now needs the Guardian's approval to advance. The wolf then turns to the masked man, asking if he is truly alone in this place. Our hero confirms he is, and the Guardian is surprised by the young man's response. Greg approaches, stating he can smell a great warrior on him, which prompts jokes from the chat. He thinks to himself that warriors of the wolf tribe can sense a unique and special scent. The wolf says he already possesses the qualification to pass, and the hero muses that they see one's essence. Greg opens the passage, declaring the test is over, which the chat calls unfair discrimination. He thinks this never happened in his past life, but then declares his true target is the wolf. The Guardian is confused, asking if he is the target and not the door directly behind him. The protagonist confirms this, explaining someone tasked him with taking him down via a mission on the stream. The wolf understands, commenting that this is to be expected from someone who possesses the soul of a great warrior. The scene then cuts to the Soughton Entertainment office, with the two agents and their boss. With a serious expression, the man begins typing furiously on his computer keyboard. This is John Tail, the department head, and he asks how many viewers the streamer in question has. The blue-haired young man replies that it's around 20 people, but his partner interjects that's not quite right. With a smile, she corrects him, saying the count is now over 30, and calls him an idiot for the mistake. The boss then turns to them and, in a stern voice, asks if they are joking with him. He complains that he knows they were gambling, and that he sent them to find talent, not a stream with 20 viewers. The woman corrects him again to 30 viewers, and he yells that that's not the point. Angrily, John suggests that Hatsuka should stream herself, since she has the skill and would attract many fans. His colleague then shouts that the stream has already surpassed 40 viewers, which only irritates the boss further. Back in the dungeon, our hero faces the giant wolf, sword in hand, ready for battle. The Guardian also prepares for the confrontation, displaying its enormous and razor-sharp claws. The protagonist grips his demonic sword, thinking he must clear his mind of everything. The weapon drains his stamina, boosting all his stats in proportion to what was consumed. The Wedge of Greed resists the sword's effect, and he tells himself to fight just as he always has. With a leap, the wolf warrior lunges forward at incredible speed to attack the young adventurer. But the masked man stands his ground, blocking the blow with his sword and creating a brilliant shower of sparks. The creature then prepares another claw attack, attempting to wound our hero in the fight. The wolf strikes with both claws, and our hero defends, the impact generating a massive shockwave. The force of the blow forces him to dig his feet into the ground to avoid being pushed back. The Guardian presses its attack, and the young man realizes the creature is currently too powerful for him. He understands that competing in brute strength is impossible, but he has another strategy in mind. Just then, the monster praises him, saying this is what's expected of a true elite warrior. The creature then spins, delivering a mighty attack that shatters the arena floor. But the protagonist dodges with ease, warning the wolf it is no match for him in this fight. With that, he tightens his grip on his demonic sword, preparing for a counterattack. The young man dashes forward, striking the Guardian with a powerful and precise red energy slash. The live stream chat comments that he's strong, and that whoever issued the mission must be regretting it. The wolf remarks that sometimes, methods more effective than brute force exist in combat. Our hero agrees, saying the warrior has been amusing, but that this is the end of the line for him. The creature then prepares for one final attack with its claws to end things for good. But suddenly the wolf is sent flying backward with immense force, crashing hard onto the dungeon floor. With his eyes glowing red, the masked man declares that those were supposed to be his final words. The Guardian is surprised, and the young man points out that its attacks are too one-dimensional and predictable. He then sidesteps a bite, adding that this makes its moves incredibly easy to evade. With a leap, he lands a kick on the monster's head, which howls in pain from the impact. The protagonist then readies his sword for the finishing blow in a swift and fatal motion. Without hesitation, he unleashes a powerful slash of red energy that strikes the wolf dead on. With his eyes glowing crimson, he prepares to finish off the mighty Guardian of the floor. The blow pierces the wolf's chest, and in its final moments, it praises him as a magnificent warrior. With that, the creature's body collapses, and the system announces our hero's victory. He gains 2 levels, several stat boosts, and 500 achievement points for the grand victory. But the battle was clearly not easy, as a trickle of red liquid drips from his body onto the floor. The live stream chat goes wild, the viewers in disbelief that he actually defeated the Guardian. With a wary look, the protagonist confirms that he has finally managed to overcome his opponent. The chat showers him with praise, and the stream's viewership jumps to 56 people at once. The system announces the mission is complete, and he receives 3,000 credits, which he will put to good use. His credits rise to 3,150, and the door to the next phase finally swings open. But suddenly, something completely unexpected happens before him, leaving him stunned. Numerous elemental trial options, ice, fire, earth, materialize for him to choose his next challenge. The chat is astounded by the 13 options, noting that the number of choices reflects a player's talent. The system asks if he wishes to challenge the lightning trial, and the chat urges him to select it. With a determined gaze and not an ounce of hesitation, our hero responds with a resounding "of course." At his confirmation, the system officially selects the lightning trial for his challenge. His body begins to glow with a blue energy as he is teleported to the trial's location. Back at the office, the agents are watching the live broadcast on a large television screen. The female agent shouts with joy, and all three celebrate the success of the young streamer they discovered. She exclaims that they found him and that she's never seen a streamer grow so quickly or have 13 choices. The boss concedes it's impressive to defeat the wolf warrior, who had never been beaten before. But he remains a rookie on the second floor, and the risk of the company investing in him is still too high. Hatsuka then proposes a wager to her boss, who is surprised by his agent's offer. If the streamer fails, she and Seijin will work for a fixed salary, but if he passes, John must sign him. Her partner panics, shouting that he doesn't know her as he tries to back out of the insane bet. The boss scoffs, pointing out that the only person to ever acquire the lightning skill was the legendary Subaru Narukami. With a confident smile, the agent replies that they'll never know unless they take the chance now. The boss accepts the wager, while the woman restrains her colleague, who is trying to escape the agreement. Back at the trial, the system announces the start of the lightning challenge, marked by pillars of blue energy. He looks around and suddenly hears someone yell for him to watch out for what's coming. At that moment, a man in armor shoves him out of the way of a danger he hadn't yet perceived. An explosion erupts at the spot, and the force of the impact throws both of them to the ground. A giant stone monster materializes before them, leaving the man in armor completely shocked. The soldier yells at our hero for just standing there, asking if he wants to be finished in this place. The mission is to defeat the giant fragment, and the young man wonders why it's appearing now. The creature charges to attack, and the chat questions if this was supposed to be the lightning challenge. He thinks to himself that this monster should only appear in the latter half of the challenge, not at the start. The masked man wonders if defeating Greg altered something, as the giant roars with fury. With a powerful slam of its fist on the ground, the creature creates a shockwave that devastates the surroundings. Our hero evades the blow and sprints toward the giant stone monster. He assesses that the monster is inferior to Greg, while the soldier he saves screams for him to flee. With that, he activates his demonic sword, which consumes life to boost power, while his skill negates the effect. The giant attacks with full force, but our hero stands his ground, parrying with his demonic sword. With a swift movement, he dodges the creature as it tries to crush him by rolling in his direction. The creature's attack misses, and the masked man exploits the opening to leap up and prepare a counter-attack. He then uses the giant's arm as a ramp to scale its body and get closer. With a mighty strike, he hits the monster's head before it can react. The masked man leaps again, leaving a trail of red liquid, and the soldier is stunned by the sight. Without wasting a moment, he runs along the creature's back to strike the weak point on its neck. He then drives his demonic sword into the monster's neck with all the force he can muster. The The stone creature groans in pain as the hero relentlessly presses his attack. With an irritated look, he complains that the monster is too loud and readies the final blow. He tells the creature to be quiet for the rest of its life as he prepares for the finishing strike. The giant creature groans in agony as the protagonist ends the fight with a decisive blow. The monster's eyes go dim, and it is finally vanquished by the masked man's sword. The giant's body crashes to the ground, and the system announces he has successfully passed Stage 4. The live stream chat is thoroughly confused, the viewers wondering what Stage 4 even is. Exhausted, he gains 3 levels, several stat boosts, and 4,000 achievement points for the victory. The system also rewards him with 2 items, the giant's heart and the mighty thunder. The soldier is shocked, and the chat realizes he received the rewards for all 4 stages at once. The soldier is stunned by our hero's strength, and the chat comments on the situation in the live stream. Stammering, the man asks what he is, but the masked man simply responds with a question of his own. Covered in grime, he states he came to defeat the giant, a response the chat finds rather vague. The scene then transitions to a small, peaceful village with wooden houses and a crystal-clear river. We see people strolling calmly through the cobblestone streets of this tranquil place. Inside a simple room, the protagonist sits on a bed, looking at his device. The live stream chat is asking him to show off the items he won, speculating about their rarity. He says he's also curious and decides to examine the items along with the chat. The first item is the giant's heart, a rare ring that increases health and regeneration. The second is the thunder armor, which boosts defense and negates negative statuses once per day. He then equips the armor, and a new mission for 5,000 credits appears if he learns the lightning skill. With a grateful expression, our hero whispers the name of the person who sent the mission. Immediately after, several more missions pop up offering more credits for the same objective. The young man thanks everyone for their support and promises he will definitely showcase the lightning skill. This makes him wonder if there are really that many people anticipating the thunder ability. He then considers that perhaps his former self was a more significant figure than he had previously imagined. Back in the room, he stares at the door and calmly tells the person on the other side to enter. The live stream chat notes that someone was eavesdropping and also posted a mission. The door opens to reveal the soldier he saved, accompanied by a blonde knight in full armor. The soldier apologizes for the delay and introduces the knight as the village captain, Lord Peleus. The captain explains that the giant's attacks have become more frequent, forcing them to remain on constant alert. For the safety of everyone, the knights have requested that all villagers stay inside their homes. The soldier expresses his surprise at finding an outsider during such a time of crisis. The blonde knight then thanks the masked man for having protected the village in his absence. The protagonist says he was only doing what was natural, his mind dwelling on the captain's name. Peleus recognizes him as a hero and says that, thankfully, they have managed to locate the giant's chief. With a determined look, he reveals their plan to risk their lives to corner their enemies. Then, both he and the soldier kneel, imploring our hero to help save their village. The young man remains silent, merely observing the 2 knights kneeling before him on the floor. The livestream chat reacts to the scene, with some viewers asking others to stop posting spoilers. He then remembers that, according to his memory, Peleus perishes in the next stage of this trial. An image of the future flashes in his mind, showing the tragic and unavoidable end of the village captain. Back in the present, the masked man asks the blonde knight to rise to his feet. With a serious gaze, he extends his hand, stating he understands the situation and will cooperate. The captain expresses his gratitude and shakes his hand as the system announces the start of Stage 5. At that, the group of knights led by Peleus charges across a plain as the sun sets. Our hero rides alongside them, glancing at his device to check the live stream chat. He thinks that as the viewer count increases, the comments scroll by faster and faster. Suddenly, the soldier he saved raises a hand, ordering everyone to halt their march immediately. He then points to the horizon, indicating the body of the giant the masked man had already defeated. The soldier recognizes the fallen form, confirming that it is the chief of the regional giants. Peleus devises a plan. He will draw the monster's attention so our hero can attack it from behind. But the protagonist cuts him off with a gesture and, in a serious tone, tells the knight to wait. The captain is confused, and the masked man points toward the giant's body with a sense of foreboding. Abruptly, the ground begins to tremble violently, a dark and mysterious energy radiating from below. The knight and his men panic at the tremor, unable to comprehend what is happening. With a grim expression, our hero realizes the truth and warns everyone that this is not human. To everyone's horror, the giant's eye slowly peels open, revealing it is still alive. The creature glares at the knights with its cracked eye, an aura of pure malevolence hanging in the air. Suddenly, several other giants begin to claw their way out of the ground around their massive chief. A horde of stone monsters emerges, to the absolute despair of the cornered knights. The captain is utterly shocked, shouting in disbelief, wondering why this is happening. One of the creatures then seizes a soldier, who screams desperately for help. The monster simply crushes the knight in its grasp, without an ounce of mercy or hesitation. In the reflection of a soldier's eye, we witness the horrific scene of his comrade being defeated. With a cruel smirk on its face, the giant glares at the remaining knights with a look of pure evil. Desperate, the captain orders all his men to fall back to the base of the mountain and flee. But it's already too late. The horde of giants relentlessly charges the group of knights. One of the soldiers is snatched by a monster as his comrades watch the scene in horror. The other knights restrain one of their friends, who screams in despair for him to stop. One of the knights cries out in anguish upon seeing his brother, Joe Chan, lying lifeless on the ground. Surrounded by the giants, Palouse yells for his men to escape, declaring it a captain's order. He tells them to think of their families back in the village, and says this isn't the end for them to start anew. With that, the soldiers begin their retreat, and the captain asks Falcon to lead the men's escape. Palouse then turns to our hero, his expression determined for what is about to unfold. He pleads with the masked man to flee and rebuild the order of knights to fight against the giants. But the protagonist grips his demonic sword and, with a serious look, says those are his lines. The captain is confused by his response, asking why he won't escape with the others. The young man explains he can't fight freely with him around, and that they will both be finished if he stays. Palouse argues that he cannot simply abandon an outsider and flee from this battle. Relenting, he says he will go rally the soldiers and ask the hero to hold on until his return. The captain then sprints away, shouting that he is in his debt and to be careful. With the night gone, the horde of giants advances on our hero with unbridled fury. But the young man doesn't back down, instead charging toward the monsters to begin the slaughter. With his eyes glowing red, he announces that he is their opponent in this mortal combat. With a swift movement, he dodges a stump and severs a giant's leg with his sword. He then uses the creature's body as a springboard to leap and attack another stone monster. The second giant roars in pain as it's struck by our hero's surprise assault. A system window announces he has defeated 2 giants and earned 20 achievement points. With a serious look, he thinks to himself that he's not used to being left alone, even in a trial. Far away, Palouse continues his run through the forest to regroup with his remaining men. But he pauses for a moment, panting with a hand on his chest, a flicker of worry in his eyes. With sweat beading on his face, the captain glances back with a deeply troubled expression. He clenches his teeth, his thoughts on the battle he left behind and the young masked man. Meanwhile, our hero continues his solitary struggle against the horde of stone giants. The live stream chat remarks that fighting so many enemies is suicide and that the score changes with the soldiers. He thinks that with his current power, he might be able to save everyone, including the village captain. Without hesitation, the young man charges forward, cutting down several giants with his demonic sword in a blur. With another swift move, he defeats one more monster, gaining 10 achievement points in the process. The masked man then parries an attack from another giant and continues his relentless assault. The sword drains his stamina, affecting his stats, but he thinks it won't be difficult if he takes them one by one. The real problem is how long he can wield the sword's power before his strength gives out. To win, he needs to broaden his view and locate the true leader of the monster horde. He then uses his sword to slice off a giant's head and launch himself high into the air. This gives him a commanding view of the battlefield, and he scans for the giant's leader. From above, he can see all the monsters and prepares for the next phase of his plan. He then uses the giants' heads as platforms to navigate across the battlefield. With a well-aimed kick, he strikes a monster's eye to clear a path through the fight. In a deadly dance, he weaves between the giants, his strikes precise and utterly fatal. The chat comments that one false step means the end and that aerial combat was his specialty. His skill helps him recover stamina and mental fortitude, and he thinks that his gear is making a difference. With his eye glowing red, he knows he must find the chief before he reaches his breaking point. Suddenly, he finally spots the leader of the giants amidst the horde of stone monsters. The horde's chief is an even larger giant with a long white beard and a particularly cruel smile. He then rushes toward the giant monster, which readies its club for an attack. The masked man knows that if he fails to defeat it in a single blow, he will be the one defeated. The giant prepares to crush him with its weapon, but our hero has a different strategy in mind. With a determined look, he prays that his risky plan will work and save everyone. With a swift movement, he prepares to activate the special ability of his new armor. A system window announces he is using the powerful thunder ability from his armor. A blast of golden energy ripples across the battlefield, stunning all the giants. The creatures cry out in pain, covering their ears from the force of the sound wave that hits them squarely. The horde's chief is also affected, left vulnerable to our protagonist's final attack. Angrily, the giant monster shouts the name of the humans and glares at the young man with hatred. Seizing the opportunity, he charges forward and drives his demonic sword into the horde chief's eye. With all his strength, he pushes the blade deeper, inflicting massive damage on the creature. The giant monster screams in agony as the young man continues his attack with fury and precision. With a determined look, he prepares to finish off the chief of the giants once and for all. The monster glares at our hero with a look of pure hatred as it is overcome by the attack. With a final strike, the protagonist decapitates the chief of the giants with his sword. The giant's body topples to the ground, and the system announces he has successfully defeated the giant seed. He passes stage 5 and levels up, earning several extra stats for his great victory. The livestream chat wonders if anyone has ever defeated that monster and how he managed to do it. With a wary look, he thinks that if he were a manga protagonist, the story would end right here. But suddenly, the sky darkens and menacing blue lightning begins to crash down from above. The other giants rise to their feet, glaring at him with eyes glowing red with intense fury. The system warns that his skill failed to resist the demonic sword's effect, leaving him weakened. He then realizes that even after clearing the stage, the monsters won't vanish until the trial is truly over. The young man thinks that the very mechanic he used to his advantage in his past life will now cause him to suffer. Suddenly, he tastes something metallic in his mouth and realizes his situation has taken a dire turn. With blood on his lips, he admits he's out of strength and that things are looking very bad for him. The giants close in around him, leaving him in a perilous situation with no apparent escape. Abruptly, the ground begins to glow with a mysterious golden energy that captures his attention. A brilliant blast of light erupts, and the young man is completely dazed by what's happening. He stares into the intense light, not understanding where it came from or what it signifies. With that, he is enveloped by the golden energy, and the giants are thrown back by its force. The scene then transitions to a dense forest with towering trees, sunlight filtering through the leaves. The camera focuses on the tree trunks and the lush vegetation of this tranquil place. We see a small wooden cabin in the middle of the forest, a soft light glowing from within. On the cabin's porch, a girl with bare ears sits in a rocking chair. The black-haired girl is sitting and scrolling through her device with a faint smile on her face. A man with long, white hair then appears from behind her, approaching with a serious expression. He asks what she is doing, but the woman merely comments on the pleasant weather and the fresh air. The young woman then says it's something they can only enjoy in this moment, and no other. Gazing into the forest, she says it's almost time, that there's a year at most left. With a determined look, he agrees, saying it's time to finally bring all of this to an end. But he chides her for being distracted during such a serious and important conversation. At that, the young man leans in, asking what has her so engrossed on her electronic device. She then shows him a picture of our hero, saying that apparently his name is Subaru Narukami. The white-haired man shouts the name in shock, but the woman clarifies it's not the one he knows. She explains it's just a streamer borrowing the name to attempt the second-floor trial. With a sad look and a forced smile, the young woman asks if he also knows the truth of the matter. He says that if Subaru had survived, Kazuki would have been erased from the tower long ago. The woman then affirms that Subaru is gone and that he needs to accept this harsh reality soon. He asks to change the subject and turns to leave, but the girl gets annoyed and calls out, "Shigeru." Filled with anger, she shouts, asking for how long he plans to hide in that boy's shadow. The white-haired young man turns and, with a serious look, poses the same question to his companion. He then points to the device, saying that's why she gets caught up in things like that live stream. The young woman defends herself, saying with an embarrassed look that she's just passing the time. But as she glances back at the screen, the girl is completely stunned by something she just saw. Shigeru grabs the device, asking in disbelief if she still clings to hope for Subaru's return. With a serious expression and a bead of sweat on his face, he stares at the screen, shocked by what he sees. Back in the dungeon, a golden aura begins to emanate from our hero's body on the ground. The energy erupts in a shockwave that hits all the surrounding giants at once. The stone creatures are sent flying by the force of the mysterious golden explosion. Surrounded by a golden aura, the masked man rises from the ground with renewed power. The system announces he has acquired the lightning skill and gained 2,000 achievement points for it. The chat goes wild, with viewers commenting that the mission's difficulty was completely broken. With a drop of sweat near his eye, he thinks that normally, one doesn't acquire this skill in such a way. The lightning ability consumes stamina and mana to wield the power of thunder and can be leveled up. The chat is in disbelief, and he thinks that at least he didn't perish and the tutorial saved him in the end. With that, he receives the rewards from the missions and thanks everyone for their incredible support on the stream. His credits soar to 20,150, and he is very pleased with the result. He remembers promising a thank you performance, and the system announces that the trial is still ongoing. The giants rise again, glaring at him with eyes glowing red with immense fury. But the protagonist says he's going to show them a little something, and a red aura envelopes him. With his 20,000 credits, he successfully upgrades his Wedge of Greed skill to level 3. The ability materializes in his hand, and he says he wants to spread it throughout his entire body. With the golden energy in his hand, he informs the monsters he's going to finish them all at once. The masked man then merges the golden energy with his demonic sword and prepares to attack. With his sword, he unleashes a powerful blast of red energy that strikes all the giants. The shockwave tears across the battlefield, completely annihilating the stone monsters. One by one, the giants are disintegrated by our hero's fury in a devastating assault. But after expending so much power, he is left panting and exhausted in the middle of the battlefield. He's annoyed because he wanted to conserve enough strength to make it back to the village safely. Kneeling, he realizes he misjudged his attack's potency and is now out of energy. Suddenly, he hears a noise and sees a troop of knights approaching on the horizon. To his surprise, Palouse and his men have returned to the battlefield to aid him in the fight. The captain is utterly shocked to see the carnage our hero wrought all by himself. He then leaps toward the young man, calling him benefactor, concerned about his current condition. With a wary look, the protagonist turns to face the newly arrived knight. He takes a deep breath, his expression one of pure irritation, unable to believe what's happening. The masked man calls him an idiot, thinking he can't believe he actually came back to the fight. In his vision, he sees the captain approaching with a look of desperation and worry. The scene then shifts to the agency office, with the device resting on the wooden table. Agent Hatsuka is sitting on the sofa, her face buried in her hands as her colleagues watch. The boss asks if it was really necessary to go to such lengths, and Seijin remarks that he'll never understand women. The woman panics, her face flushed, wondering what she should do in this situation. With an expression of pure embarrassment, she is completely flustered by what she just did. She wonders if she came across as too cold, and if she should have used more emojis in her message. Seijin asks if she's a die-hard fan, saying he thought she wanted to be a streamer's manager. With a love-struck expression, she shouts that before she's a manager, she's a fan, and she can't help herself. The woman then stands up, reminding her boss that she had told him about the lightning ability before. She explains that the lightning skill is now exclusive to Subaru's group, and Seijun looks relieved. With a satisfied smile, the boss comments that it's no wonder no one else has managed to acquire the skill. Suddenly, the agent gets excited about something on the device and grabs her colleague's attention. With a silly expression, she says it seems the streamer read her message but then ignored it. She then puts on a dramatic display, freezing up completely at the rejection she just received. The two men are left speechless by the bizarre scene of their completely frozen coworker. The scene then takes us to a streamer's studio, filled with various statuettes of famous characters. A streamer who specializes in battle analysis prepares to begin his live broadcast. Known as Hawkeye, he has carved out an unshakable position by crushing rivals with his sharp insight. He has analyzed numerous players including Kurokoa Amon, the future of the Blue Zone Guild. He's also covered Kazuki Kyojo, a former member of the Blue Eyes and a player representing Earth in the Tower. But naturally, the intergenerational legend Subaru Nukami will be no exception to his analysis. He then kicks off his live stream, announcing he will dissect the hottest player of the moment, the new Subaru. The streamer asks the chat to hold their criticism at the start and begins watching our hero's stream. With a look of pure shock, he is left speechless by what he's witnessing, wondering what he's seeing. With a grin of excitement, he praises the young man's performance, admitting he is exceptionally good. He wonders at the level of concentration, noting that a normal human couldn't handle a skill so well. He explains that the young man controlled the skill perfectly, channeling the necessary power into the sword without any waste. With a satisfied smile, the streamer admits the young man didn't make a single error throughout the entire fight. He declares the young man is destined to be a big name, and that he plans to keep watching his streams. With a thoughtful expression, Hawkeye says he forgot to give his one-line summary of the streamer. With his eyes gleaming, he asserts that in terms of control, he might even surpass the original Subaru. Back at the trial, our hero awakens in his bed, and the system announces that Stage 6 is waiting. His fatigue has been completely restored, and the system asks if he wishes to suspend the trial for now. He thinks that even without fatigue, he's mentally drained and decides to pause the trial. The young man then picks up his device and thanks everyone for having watched his live broadcast. He apologizes and informs them the next stream will be the day after tomorrow, as he needs a day of rest. With that, the system announces the live broadcast has ended, and his body is teleported away. Our hero returns to the trial's waiting room to finally get some much-needed rest. With his device in hand, he decides to explore the stage and prepare for what's coming next. As he walks, he notices a mysterious stone gate, and a message catches his attention. The message is from Souten Entertainment, from an agent named Hatsuka in the management division. He then wonders if this is just a simple spam email and feels a bit suspicious. But upon reading the company's name, he is surprised as it triggers a memory from his past life. The scene then shifts to a coffee shop, with a wooden sign hanging at its entrance. Inside the establishment, the body's former owner is sitting at a table, scrolling through his device. The young man appears to be waiting for someone, taking a sip of his drink as he stares at his phone. An information window explains that Souten is a management company for streamers. The protagonist thinks to himself that the world has changed immensely now that companies like that exist. A chat log shows people's reactions to Hawkeye's analysis, with most of the comments praising the streamer. He then realizes that Hawkeye is also a streamer with Souten and is known for being brutally honest. With a surprised look, the young man admits that despite everything, the streamer seems to have a good eye. Suddenly, a mysterious figure in black boots approaches the coffee shop where he's sitting. The man stops in front of the establishment, staring at the building with a serious expression. He reads the analysis on his device and becomes irritated with the comparison the streamer made. Angrily, the man tells him not to joke with him, as the young man has only just reached the second floor. With his eyes glowing red, he curses the streamer and vows to tear out his eyes when he finds him. He then kicks a stone on the ground in anger, shouting that he is extremely irritated by the situation. The man then enters the coffee shop, saying his morning mood has been completely ruined by this. With a forced smile, he lets out a laugh and approaches our protagonist's table. The young man wonders if this is his unlucky day, since everywhere he goes, he runs into strange people. He continues to fiddle with his device and drink his coffee, paying little attention to the newcomer. The man then stops directly in front of the young man's table with a serious and somewhat annoyed expression. He accidentally bumps the table, spilling the hot mug of coffee all over the young man. The protagonist cries out in pain from the hot liquid on his body and glares angrily at the man. The man apologizes with a mocking smile as a bead of sweat runs down the young man's face. With a look of contempt, the man asks if he is the so-called Subaru and leans in close. He comments that they've been running into each other a lot and that the second floor seems quite small for both of them. The protagonist ignores him, continuing to use his device as if nothing had happened. The man then taunts him, offering to pay for the coffee since he's always short on cash. With his eyes glowing red, he prepares to attack the young man who ignored him in the coffee shop. But the protagonist stands up and walks out of the place without giving the man a second glance. He then turns and asks if the young man has forgotten the warning he gave him last time. Angrily, the man grabs him by the shirt collar, calling him a scoundrel for ignoring him. He threatens to finish him off like in the old days if he's so eager for another beating. But the young man firmly grips the man's hand, saying he's sorry but has no time for this. With a simple squeeze, he breaks the man's grip, who groans in pain from the young man's strength. The man then wonders in shock if the protagonist had always been this strong. The young man then says to consider that payment for the coffee and thanks him for the kindness. Angrily, the man yells for him to come back, but it's too late to stop him from leaving. Our hero then exits the coffee shop, and the wooden door swings shut behind him with a thud. The man lets out a laugh, commenting that he was trying to climb the tower quietly and peacefully. But his irritation boils over, and with red eyes, he complains that both Subarus keep provoking him. Overcome with rage, he starts running through the coffee shop to chase down the young man who defied him. Far away, the protagonist remembers he needs to respond to the message from the agency. He then looks at his device and composes a reply to the proposal from Soughton Entertainment. With everything ready, he sends the message and now simply has to wait for the company's response. The scene shifts to Agent Hatsuka, who is relaxing in her bathtub with a rubber ducky. She seems quite content when suddenly a notification on her device captures her attention. The message is from our hero, who simply suggests they meet once and nothing more. Meanwhile, the protagonist heads to a dungeon filled with fallen creatures to continue his training. With his demonic sword in hand, he prepares to confront the boss of this gloomy place. The system then announces he is entering the boss room of the exiled Lizardman's Hidyat. His skill resists the sword's effect, and he thinks that while he's grown accustomed to the body, there's still more to do. Suddenly, a mysterious flame flickers in the darkness, heralding the arrival of the dungeon boss. The system announces the dungeon boss is a salamander, a giant creature composed of fire. The monster then lets out a terrifying roar, preparing for battle against the young adventurer. The hero says that to avoid any accidents, he needs to master his lightning ability and test it now. He faces the monster, completing his thought by saying he needs to know its maximum output. With that, the system announces that lightning energy is charging in his legs for combat. He dashes forward at high speed, and the salamander leaps toward him for a direct and brutal assault. At that moment, the image of his former self appears behind him like a phantom from the past, observing him. The creature tries to clamp its sharp teeth on the young man, but he manages to dodge the blow just in time. The young man vaults over the fire-breathing monster, preparing for a swift counter-attack. Without wasting a moment, he charges his demonic sword with lightning energy for a powerful strike. With his charged sword, the hero fearlessly advances through the creature's fiery attack. But as he strikes the monster, his skill fails to resist the recoil, and his fatigue increases slightly. Nevertheless, he manages to land a solid blow on the creature with his sword, ending the battle in the dungeon. With that, the system announces he has cleared the dungeon, and he levels up, gaining several extra stats. The protagonist then exits the dungeon and walks through a dark forest imbued with a bluish energy. He thinks that the stamina reduction effect is better than he anticipated, and his fatigue is at 61. But upon seeing the cost to upgrade his skill, he complains that doubling the credits is a bit steep. The young man then wishes for someone to appear and offer him a good job, and a voice responds. Suddenly, a mysterious silhouette materializes in the middle of the forest, catching our hero's attention. The man approaches, repeating the word hunt with a mocking and highly intimidating tone. With a dark expression and a smirk, the man faces the young man with a very powerful presence. He reveals himself to be Isaac, saying they've known each other for a long time, but this is a surprise. With an annoyed look, the protagonist calls him a very persistent guy for showing up now. Isaac explains that he thought a lot about the matter, but his patience has finally run out. With a mocking smile, the blonde man proposes that the two of them settle things right here and now. With a serious expression, our hero faces his opponent, wondering what the guy means. The scene then shifts to a bustling city at night, featuring a large clock and a dirigible. We see a blonde young man in a stylish jacket entering a building with a very serious expression. But suddenly, a hand stops him in his tracks, beckoning him for a conversation. The young man then sits down with Hawkeye, who greets him and asks if his live stream is going well. With a smile, the blonde man replies that it's so and that his audience is always the same. Hawkeye takes a sip of his drink, remarking that this is healthier, as what is built slowly doesn't easily crumble. The young man asks why he was summoned, and Hawkeye praises him, saying he is as sharp as his name suggests. The analyst reveals the topic as the Subaru Narukami he reviewed and asks if he was being serious. The blonde man confirms, stating the rookie's talent surpasses the original's, but reaching that level is another story. His eyes gleam with a golden intensity as he carefully considers the situation. Hawkeye understands the assessment and reveals he is thinking of recruiting the young man for his agency. The young man is encouraged, praising his good eye, but reminds him the newcomer has few viewers and little recognition. The analyst agrees but says what he's heard just now has given him more confidence in his decision. He then proposes a collaboration between the two, since boosting an audience is, after all, their job. Back in the forest, the blonde man smiles, saying now it's just the two of them in this dark, secluded place. With a wary look, our protagonist simply confirms his opponent's statement without much emotion. Isaac taunts him, saying he got carried away and fled the dungeon, which is why he's unscathed. He continues his mockery, asking if the young man dreams of mastering lightning like that other streamer. With immense anger, the blonde man curses the name Subaru, saying if he perished, he should have stayed that way. His eyes glow with fury as he complains that everyone seems to be deliberately provoking him lately. Tired of the conversation, the protagonist grabs him by the collar with an annoyed look and questions him. With a sigh, our hero admits he also didn't anticipate an era filled with Subaru imitators. He then confronts him, asking why he treats him with such animosity and hatred. The blonde man replies it's because of his name and asks why he hates a name that everyone else loves. The young man is left completely stunned and speechless by the question, a bead of sweat tracing down his face. Angrily, he grabs him, asking how he dares say that, knowing who his father is, and the hero questions him. Isaac then reveals his father is the mighty Reinhardt, a ranker from the 9th floor of the tower. The protagonist is shocked by this revelation, remembering the name of that famous swordsman. A memory from the past surfaces, showing a battle where something incredible had just occurred. The former Subaru of the Blue Eyes had just defeated the powerful ranker Reinhardt from the Rune continent. And the most astonishing part was that he had won the fight with a single, decisive blow. The battle lasted less than 30 seconds, and even wounded, his opponent insisted he could still fight. But his body was trembling, and he could barely remain standing after receiving that attack. With no more strength to continue, the mighty ranker finally collapsed to the ground, utterly defeated. Back in the present, Isaac shouts for the young man not to speak his father's name so casually. The protagonist then understands that the reason for so much hatred is tied to the young man's father's nickname. Angrily, he asks if the blonde man has any idea how much Subaru Hosoi suffered. Because of that, Isaac gets irritated by the question and tells the young man to shut up as he summons a fiery aura. He stomps hard on the ground, saying he couldn't care less about what the other one suffered. Our hero faces the flames with a serious expression, preparing for the impending battle. With that, the blonde man readies a powerful fire punch to attack the protagonist with everything he has. With a look of pure fury, he warns that there's no need for more talk, it's time to go down. He charges forward, screaming that he hates Narukami Subaru and that the name makes him sick to his stomach. The young man complains that he's nothing special but acts like he is just because he gets all the attention. And because of the guild leader's arrogance, all the other members went down with him. With a cruel smile, he says they are all rotting in the underworld, getting what they deserve. With a serious look, the protagonist faces the ball of fire, and the blonde man declares his luck has run out. With that, the fiery explosion engulfs the young man, carving a large crater in the ground. Isaac lets out a laugh and, with a puff, extinguishes the flame in his hand with an air of superiority. He then apologizes, saying he misjudged his strength and did something terrible to his friend. But with a malicious smirk, he adds that now he'll go after that masked streamer. With a curious look, the blonde man wonders about the mask and why he is wearing it now. Suddenly, the smoke clears to reveal the silhouette of our hero, completely unscathed. With a hand to his face, he asks if the blonde man is referring to him with the mask he's wearing. Isaac is completely dumbfounded, shouting that it's impossible for him to have survived the attack. He can't understand how the young man managed to withstand his fire head on without a single injury. The protagonist then stumps firmly on the ground, saying he doesn't feel well after all that. With a serious expression, he asks if the blonde man feels good having someone like him bad, mouthing everyone. With a decisive punch, he strikes Isaac's face before he can react to defend himself. The force of the blow is so immense that the blonde man's eye turns red, and he feels intense pain. The young man cries out in pain and collapses to the ground powerless as our hero looks down on him. With blood trickling from his mouth, the blonde man continues to cry out in pain while the young man just stares coldly. With the mask on his face, he rebukes him for speaking ill of them and glares at him with contempt. Suddenly, Isaac begins to cough, realizing something is very wrong with his body. With a serious look, the masked man proposes a little quiz for the blonde man lying on the forest floor. He then puts on his mask, asking who he thinks is standing before him at this moment. With a serious expression, he removes his mask, asking if he is, in fact, the true Subaru of the Blue Eyes. Isaac kneels, coughing, tells him not to joke around, and concludes he must be the streamer Narukami Subaru. With a smirk, he scoffs that the lightning skill can't be a big deal if even trash like him could learn it. He then wonders, his hand wreathed in flames, if our hero really thinks he can win at this level. The blonde man boasts that if a weakling like him learned it, it means he is superior to the original. Overcome with rage, he charges with all his might to attack the protagonist with his powerful fire ability. But our hero sidesteps and, with a swift and precise motion, severs his opponent's hand. The young man is completely shocked, unable to react as he sees his hand being cut off. The masked man says his answer was wrong and expresses his amazement at the sheer amount of nonsense he spoke. Desperate, Isaac asks what he means as the sword's edge nears his neck. The hero then questions him about how much the previous owner of this body suffered because of him. He reminds him how awful it is to have someone speak ill of you, and the blonde man begins to grasp the truth. Stammering, Isaac finally realizes that the person before him is the true Narukami of the Blue Eyes. Without hesitation, our hero strikes him squarely with his sword, ending the battle once and for all. With a cold gaze, he warns that the game is over and he will no longer go easy on anyone. He then turns away, saying he's provided more than enough service for that guy in the forest. The young man says his goodbyes, thanking him for the use of his body for his grand revenge against the blonde. Far away in a coffee shop, two waitresses comment on whether he wasn't a die-hard Narukami fan. One of them asks if he isn't embarrassed, but the other suggests he seems to be doing a live stream. The masked man thinks to himself that he will maintain his policy of not showing his face, as it's a huge advantage. Suddenly, a woman approaches, apologizing for her late arrival at their meeting place. With a flushed face, she introduces herself as the person who had contacted him earlier. With an excited smile, the young woman says her name is Hatsuka and that she is the agency's manager. Our hero then shakes her hand, introducing himself as Narukami Subaru, and she expresses her honor in meeting him. Blushing, she thinks to herself that the two of them really do resemble each other and share the same aura. The young woman wonders if the real Subaru has returned and if he wears the mask because he's an imposter. The protagonist breaks her out of her thoughts, asking if there's something wrong. The woman recalls her boss's advice to make a good impression and not to act strangely. He then places a hand on her head, asking if she was just standing there this whole time. Startled, she exclaims that she is a fervent fan, and the young man is surprised by her reaction. He calms her down, explaining that he isn't the real one and that she is younger than he imagined. But the woman interrupts, saying she's been watching him from the very beginning and was his first viewer. The masked man is surprised, thinking that she remembers more about that time than he does. With a smile, he comments that he was very inexperienced back then, and that it's incredible she was watching. The agent insists it was fate and that she begged the company to let her be his manager. Adopting a professional demeanor, she says the contract is ready and that she will summarize the terms. She explains the agency will help create added value by using the Narukami icon. Our hero then asks what he needs to do, and she replies that he just needs to keep streaming. The young man is surprised by the simplicity, and she explains it's because he was the first to master the lightning skill. With a smile, the agent asks if the terms are satisfactory and if he accepts the contract. Blushing, she says the other managers are more professional, but he doesn't understand her meaning. The agent panics, wondering if a manager with his skills could have risen so high. The protagonist thinks that his opponents will only get stronger, and that he needs to continue to pick up the pace. With a flushed face, the young woman thinks she needs to project a reliable image and worries he might refuse. But he surprises her by saying he understands he can trust her and extends his hand for a deal. With a serious look, our hero asks the manager to take good care of him, leaving her speechless. With tears welling in her eyes, she shakes his hand, saying she should be the one asking that of him. The scene then cuts to a new live stream from our hero, with numerous comments and viewers. The stream reaches 703 viewers at once, and he is amazed by the number. He wonders if this is because of the announcement his new manager made for his broadcast. We see a cute version of the agent typing on her laptop, preparing the live stream announcement. With everything ready, the young man prepares to begin, and his body starts to glow with a blue energy. At that, the system announces the start of Stage 6 of the tower, the challenge of the legend for our hero. The scene takes us to a dark and rainy forest, showing a camp with several tents. We see the silhouette of two knights entering one of the tents, carrying wooden crates. Inside the tent, Captain Pilus and his men are gathered to discuss strategy. The blonde man then asks about the whereabouts of the benefactor who helped them, and his soldier confirms he is there. One of the knights questions whether they should trust an outsider, and his colleague agrees. Another soldier expresses doubt that Pilus wasn't deceived, asking if he wasn't just a minion. Angrily, the captain rebukes him, shouting at him for speaking of his savior in such a way. Suddenly, the soldier he saved introduces him to the others, announcing that the benefactor is awakened. At this, Pilus rushes to his side, asking if he's alright, and the young man says he can walk on his own. But the other knights remain skeptical, comment that the mask he wears is highly suspicious. The masked man then confronts them, asking if they don't believe, or simply refuse to believe, that he was victorious. He recalls learning to adjust his microphone so that only the viewers could hear his voice. With a mocking tone, he calls them reckless, and a live stream chat praises his immense confidence. Just then, an older knight approaches with his hand extended, saying he first wants to offer his thanks. The man introduces himself as Dale and extends his hand for a handshake with our hero. As they shake hands, he laments that while he was protecting the village, everyone was mercilessly trampled. Our hero is confused by his choice of words, and the knight confirms it was that guy. The young man then asks if there is someone more dangerous than the chief, and Dale confirms there is. Legend tells that the true giants who battled the gods were sealed away and vanished. The giants they face now are merely traces or lingering thoughts that were left behind. But Dale explains that the giant that appeared after the chief is different, something much closer to the legend. The live stream chat wonders if this isn't an 8th floor level challenge and how it can possibly be defeated. With a determined look, the masked man declares that they have no choice but to defeat it. The other knights call him overconfident, saying he only talks like that because he hasn't faced it yet. Suddenly, Captain Pilus shouts the benefactor's name, grabbing his attention during the discussion. He then reveals an ancient legend about a fragment of lightning hidden atop Millennium Mountain. With a grave expression, the captain is about to reveal the only person who can find this item. With a look of conviction, Pilus reveals he believes only our hero can find the item. Suddenly, a memory surfaces of a village being assaulted by a horde of giants. One of the giants' paddle glares at the villagers with a look of pure malice and cruelty. The legendary giant then appears, calling the stone creature his son with a dark voice. A knight is sent flying by the force of a giant's attack during the battle. The legendary monster then seizes the knight in its hand and, with a cruel smile, says it will crush him. With a powerful grip, it crushes the knight in its hand without a shred of mercy or remorse. With his hand stained, he promises to feed the knight with the red liquid of humans. In the reflection of our hero's eye, we see the legendary giant with its hand stained red. On horseback atop a cliff, he observes the monster, and the chat wonders if it's a true giant. The masked man thinks the trial is trying to get them all finished, and the chat agrees that impossible things happen. The captain warns that the giants will arrive in 3 days, and that he must flee if he can't find the lightning. The protagonist ascends the mountain, thinking that to win, the power of lightning is indispensable. With a serious look in his former self beside him, he declares there's no trial he cannot overcome. He then realizes he used an old catchphrase, and the chat comments that his confidence is off the charts. Several missions pop up in the system, and he's relieved that his identity hasn't been discovered. With the reins in hand, the young man prepares to continue his journey through the rainy mountain. He rides through the downpour and fog, his objective to find the fragment of lightning. The horse stops midway, and the masked man dismounts to continue his search on foot. With a determined expression, he thinks that the lightning fragment must truly be hidden in this place. He faces the rocky mountain, preparing to begin his ascent in search of the item. With a determined look, he starts climbing the mountain with his bare hands, without hesitation. A memory arises, Palouse explaining that the fragment is the stuff of legends, and nothing is known about it. The masked man asks if he knows how to obtain the item, but the captain says he only knows the legend. But he guarantees one thing is certain: whoever wielded lightning in the past annihilated the giants. Far away, the agent holds her device with a lost expression, wondering what happened. Suddenly, she receives a call and celebrates that the contract has finally been successfully closed. Her boss congratulates her, saying she has finally become a real person with this achievement. She asks if that was a compliment, and he says he met with Hawkeye and has something to tell her. But with the contract in hand, she ends the call, leaving her boss completely baffled. Exhausted, the young woman collapses on her bed, and with a satisfied smile, declares her work for the day is done. With a love-struck look and a flushed face, she prepares to watch her streamer's broadcast. She holds the device, commenting that watching and venerating live is a fan's greatest pleasure. On the stream, the protagonist repeats his motto: there is no trial in the tower that he cannot overcome. With eyes shining with admiration, the agent watches the broadcast with intense focus and affection. But suddenly, she is shocked, wondering what she just heard and if it wasn't a mistake. With a tear streaming down her face, she realizes that was a phrase from 20 years ago. Back on the mountain, a golden lightning bolt splits the sky, striking the peak with immense force. The masked man is enveloped by the golden energy, and the chat wonders if he's not getting desperate. With his foot glowing, he wonders which of the two is more resilient and prepares for the final test. With a battle cry, he declares he will fight until the end and braces for the final challenge. He then punches the rock with all his might, and a massive explosion of energy occurs at the site. With his feet firmly planted, the young man gazes at the result of his attack with a serious expression. Without his mask and with a confident smile, he finally announces he has found what he was looking for. He then turns to face the massive stone door that was revealed by the impact of his punch. With his hand glowing, he explains to the chat that the sensation doesn't translate through the stream, but he feels it. He then reveals that a massive power of lightning is calling out to his own ability. With a determined look, he stares at the large stone door and says the power is coming from there. He then begins to walk toward the door to finally discover what lies on the other side. The chat comments on the door's immense size and wonders how he'll open it without a key. Ignoring the comments, the young man simply places his hand on the stone door. With a smirk, he recognizes the obvious hint, and his hand begins to glow with lightning energy. The system then announces it is generating a lightning bolt, and that his skill is resisting the ability's recoil. With a powerful punch, he prepares to shatter the door, and the chat wonders if he's being serious. He then declares that if the power is calling to him so intensely, he will answer. With all his might, he punches the stone door, lightning energy concentrate in his fist. The attack is so powerful that a massive explosion of golden energy reverberates throughout the entire mountain. From the impact, the stone door shatters into countless pieces, revealing the passage beyond. An intense blue light shines from the other side, and the live stream chat celebrates the hero's grand achievement. With a serious and determined look, he steps into the passage to face whatever awaits him inside. With his feet firmly on the ground, the young man stares into the darkness on the other side with a serious expression. He then enters the passage, and the system warns that he cannot leave until he clears the stage. The location is the path where lightning walks, and we see a statue of a giant stone dragon. Far away at the rainy camp, the knights stand guard, awaiting the hero's return. Inside the tent, the group gathers to drink and discuss the situation, a map spread on the table. Dale then asks Palouse if he truly believes the young man can obtain the lightning. With a confident smile, the captain replies that he can, stating he is absolutely certain of it. The knight questions his decision to place so much faith in a stranger, but Palouse says he has already proven his strength. But Dale grows angry, shouting that it doesn't matter if it's the lightning or not, because they're all doomed anyway. One of the knights glares at him, saying he doesn't understand the true power of the giant they faced. With his eyes wide with fear, the young man says he experienced the monster's power firsthand. Palouse consoles him, saying that even so, they cannot simply give up on this battle. With a smile, he tells them to place their faith in the young hero who is doing all this for them. The young man panics, saying it's easy for him to say since he wasn't there in the village. Suddenly, one of the soldiers rushes in, shouting that the situation outside is dire. He desperately announces that the legendary giant has finally reached their camp. All the knights panic, preparing for the battle that is about to erupt. Meanwhile, our hero explores an ice cavern with high walls and a shimmering blue glow. With a serious expression and his mask on his face, he prepares for the challenge that awaits him. He then walks through the cavern, wondering what exactly he needs to do in this place. The livestream chat comments that there's nothing here, but one viewer suggests the lightning is too fast to see. The masked man agrees, explaining that before it discharges, lightning is just electrical charges in the air. Therefore, he understands this isn't a test where he needs to search with his eyes, but with his senses. He recalls the trial's name and realizes the path is where the lightning walks, not where it currently is. The young man then feels the lightning calling to him, sensing the powerful attraction it has on him. With a determined look, he removes his mask and prepares for what is to come. He then picks up a small stone from the ground and throws it forward into the cave with all his might. The stone is enveloped by a golden energy, and he realizes the invisible lightning is suffused throughout the air. The stone begins to be charged by the energy, and the deeper it travels, the stronger the reaction becomes. Suddenly, the stone explodes in a shower of golden lightning, and the chat wonders what that was. With a smile, he realizes he was right, and that even knowing this, he has no choice but to press forward. He then concludes the test is about his endurance. If he can't withstand it, he will be finished. Without his mask, he faces the path with a serious expression, preparing for the challenge of endurance. Suddenly, a donation of 100 credits appears, the viewer asking what he's so afraid of. Several other missions pop up, and our hero begins his sprint through the cavern of ice and lightning. With a determined look, he expresses his gratitude for the rewards and continues his race for survival. Far away, a cauldron of bubbling soup sits in a stone fireplace over a lit fire. We see a white-haired man sitting in an armchair, calmly scrolling through his device. With a serious expression, he stares at the screen of his device, appearing deeply focused on what he sees. He then looks up with a serious expression, something on his device having caught his attention. Suddenly, he is startled by the arrival of a black-haired girl who has caught him on the sofa. With a curious look, she asks why he is hiding his device in such a way. The young woman teases him, asking if he was watching something inappropriate on his phone. With an awkward smile, he denies hiding anything, claiming his eyes were just tired. She then sits beside him, reminding him that they say his hair grows faster that way. The young man says he stopped watching the live stream, and that he can't shake a strange feeling. With a smile, she asks about his reaction and if he can't relax on the sofa with her there. The young man then panics, shouting at the girl who gave him a very suggestive look. He complains that his eardrums will burst, and the woman tells him to relax and not mind her. With a trembling hand, he hides his device, trying to mask his nervousness about the situation. The young woman calls him strange for being so stubborn and not listening to anyone, then falls silent for a moment. Suddenly, she gets up, and the young man asks where she is going and if she wants to stay longer. He then offers her bread or a place to lie down, but the girl just stares at him in silence. With a racing heart, she ascends the stairs, leaving him alone in the room with a thoughtful look. Relieved, he mutters that was a close call, and he almost got caught watching the stream on his phone. He then resumes watching, thinking that if she had found out, she would have caused a huge scene again. With a sad expression, he reflects that even if their positions were reversed, Subaru would never forget them. He then watches the stream, commenting that the personality and manner of speaking are identical to his friends. On the stream, our hero thanks him for the rewards, and the young man comments that he is nothing like the original. With a laugh, he wonders what this is all about, just as the girl surprises him with a hand on his shoulder. Blushing, she questions him, asking if he really thought she wouldn't notice. With a dark expression, she says he's 100 years too early if he thinks he can fool her. Back in the cave, the system instructs him to carve the path of lightning to advance. With tears of pain streaming down his face, he braces himself for the most difficult challenge of his life. With his feet firmly planted, the young man faces the icy path with immense determination and courage. The golden energy envelops him, and the system shows his progress is at 2.3%. With his hand glowing, he feels the lightning's energy flowing relentlessly through his entire body. He thinks the sensation is familiar. He has dealt with lightning more times than he can count. With his eye glowing intensely, he continues to absorb the energy from his surroundings. The system announces his progress is now at 3.2%, and he presses on. The masked man thinks he still has a long way to go but has no intention of giving up now. With a firm step, he moves forward, and the system shows his progress has reached 5.1%. The chat asks why he isn't running, and the protagonist announces he will not be reading the comments. With a serious expression, he thinks that reaching the objective is the bare minimum he can do in this trial. But if possible, he wants to aim even higher, to shatter every existing expectation. With a determined look, he continues to absorb the lightning's power with his entire body. Far away, the blonde streamer watches the live broadcast with a very serious expression on his face. With his hand on his chin, he appears deeply focused on what is happening on his computer screen. Hawkeye then recalls his conversation with the agency's boss about a collaboration between the two. With his mug in hand, he prepares to make a pivotal decision for his future. He explains that in streaming entertainment, you can only do half the work, and that's just part of it. The streamer then says that popularity is determined by family and the players of the current era. Hawkeye agrees, commenting that Subaru's streams are more like a veteran player's vlog. He tells the young man to create his normal content, noting that while Subaru may be a rookie, he has talent. The boss then advises him to ride the comet's tail and become a star that ascends with it. With a determined look, the young streamer considers the proposal with great seriousness and ambition. His eyes shine with the possibility of achieving the fame and success he so deeply desires. With a smile, he recalls that he fled because he lacked confidence and wanted to be greater than everyone. In his mind, he envisions himself as a star in the sky, wondering if he can be like them someday. He reaches his hand toward the starry sky, questioning if he can truly achieve his dreams. Suddenly, he snaps out of his reverie, wondering what he was doing in the middle of work. He then turns his attention back to his computer screen, preparing to continue his live broadcast. With a bead of sweat on his face, he is shocked by what he sees on the screen, wondering if he's going crazy. On the live stream screen, our hero is being relentlessly bombarded by a shower of golden lightning. With his body wounded and bleeding, he continues to absorb the energy with immense pain and effort. Even with his body at its limit, he refuses to give up, continuing to endure the lightning's power in the cave. He groans in pain as the energy courses through his entire body in a brutal test of endurance. The young man then stumps hard on the ground, preparing for the next phase of his deadly challenge. With a cry of pain, he continues to withstand the merciless energy of the lightning that strikes him. With his face dirty and wounded, he faces the pain with a look of determination to conquer this trial. He thinks that the stronger the lightning, the more deeply it penetrates his body in the process. With the golden energy flowing through him, the young man says this should be sufficient for now. He then reveals that even the smallest meridians in his body are beginning to flow with lightning. The system announces his progress has reached 20.7%, and he continues the process. The activation of the minor meridians is underway, and the lightning successfully settles into his body. With a determined look, he thinks he must master this, no matter what happens here. An explanation shows us that the minor meridians are small vessels that connect the entire body. The system warns that the malady of the lightning has begun, and he realizes he's taking a dangerous shortcut. He thinks he would normally do this with his own mana, as red liquid trickles down his leg. But relying on external lightning causes unimaginable pain, and he groans from the intense sensation. Even with his body at its limit and bleeding, he continues the absorption process without giving up. Far away, Agent Hatsuko watches the live broadcast from her bed with a worried expression. With a hand over her mouth, she groans in distress at seeing the young man suffering on the screen. With a tear on her face, she wonders if he is attempting to open his minor meridians right there. She then realizes he's doing it while moving and without using his own mana. With her hand on her face, the young woman concludes the pain must be unimaginable, and that most would pass out. Even though perishing in the trial doesn't affect reality, the pain is still as real as it gets. With her lips pursed, she wonders why he is pushing himself so far and taking such risks. With a flushed face, she stares at the screen, questioning the young streamer's motivations. The system announces his progress has reached 50.3%, and he continues. With his head bowed, he thinks it's all his fault, that he was the one who led his friends to their end. He blames himself for being reckless and for pushing them forward with his overconfidence. A memory arises, showing his former self telling his companions that there is no trial he cannot overcome. With a confident smile, he tells his friends not to worry, because in the end, he is the one who always wins. His comrades in the Blue Eyes Guild look at him with expressions of admiration and complete trust. With his face bleeding, he remembers what he said and deeply regrets his words from that day. He then continues to blame himself for not being more careful and for his blind self-assurance. With red-rimmed eyes, he thinks that if it weren't for that, none of them would have perished in the battle. The image of the traitor Kazuki flashes in his mind, with a mocking smile and a dagger in hand. The blonde man accuses him of having failed, because he was too full of himself, and that's why everything went wrong. With a cry of pain and rage, the masked man unleashes a blast of golden energy in the ice cave. He then continues to run through the snow, leaving a trail of red liquid and pain in his wake. With no more strength to continue, he finally collapses onto the cave floor, completely spent. With his hand glowing with lightning energy, he passes out in the cold snow and loses consciousness. Suddenly, he finds himself in a green field under a blue sky, a gentle breeze on his face. Confused, the young man wonders where he is and if this is all just a dream or an illusion. He then spots a group of people gathered around a campfire beneath a tree. With a bead of sweat on his face, he looks at the group, wondering if they are real or just memories. With his eyes wide with surprise, he recognizes his former guildmates from the Blue Eyes. He then calls out the name of each of them, his broken heart filled with hope and joy. He then wonders if it was all a dream and falls into a dark and mysterious abyss. Suddenly, one of his friends embraces him from behind, saying he had an incredibly disgusting dream. With a smile and a tear on his face, the young man says he knew they were all alright. But his friends' expressions shift, and they glare at him with looks of pure anger and disappointment. With red eyes, they question him for escaping their fate and for not perishing with them. With a look of despair, the young man calls out to his friends, not understanding what is happening. With a look of contempt, one of his friends accuses him of having acted arrogantly and selfishly. The girl then asks why he didn't protect them, blaming him for her tragic end. With eyes full of hatred, he calls his friend's name, remembering what happened to her. The scene then changes, and all his friends are consumed by a dark, red energy. With his mouth agape in horror, the young man screams in despair at the terrible scene before him. His companions are devoured by shadows, and he can do nothing to save them. He reaches out his hand, shouting for them not to leave, to wait for him in that place. Desperate, the young man pleads with them not to leave him alone, continuing to scream for them. With sweat streaming down his face, he watches helplessly as his friends vanish into the darkness. He begs them to stop, but it's too late, and he collapses to the ground, too weak to continue. Back in the cave, he awakens realizing it was a hallucination from opening the meridians. The system announces his progress has reached 97%, and that his magical power has increased. With a determined look, he is grateful for being reminded of the reason he is still living. The image of the traitor Kazuki flashes in his mind, and he prepares for his final revenge. The scene returns to the village where knights and villagers are running desperately for their lives. Panic spreads, and civilians scream in horror at the arrival of the giant monster in the village. With a devastating impact, the legendary giant lands with full force, spreading chaos throughout the area. With a cruel smile and glowing eyes, the creature glares down at the humans with pure malice and contempt. One of the knights wonders if this is the true chief, and another laments that the masked man fled. But one of the soldiers says with conviction that their benefactor will surely return for the fight. Peleus grows angry, shouting at his men for doubting a stranger who risked his life for them. With a furious look, the captain questions if they can still call themselves true knights. The knight Dale then calms him with a hand on his shoulder, agreeing with the captain's words. He reminds everyone that their primary responsibility is to protect the village above all else. With that, Dale draws his sword, which begins to glow with a mysterious bluish energy. The knight says they should not be the ones protected, but those who protect others in battle. With a battle cry, he commands everyone to fight and perish as knights on this day of despair. Back in the cave, our hero's progress reaches 99% and is nearly complete. The energy then condenses into a golden sphere at the very fragment of lightning he sought. Wearing his mask, he faces the sphere, saying this must be the final objective of the trial. But the system warns that his fatigue has risen to 97, pushing him dangerously close to the limit. With his face bleeding and utterly exhausted, he knows he just needs one last push to achieve his goal. The lightning's energy is so intense that pieces of his mask begin to crack under the pressure. The system warns him that continuing is dangerous, but he takes one final step toward the sphere. With his boot glowing, he takes the last step to reach the fragment of lightning before him. Meanwhile, in the village, a knight stomps hard on the ground, preparing for battle. With his sword in hand, the knight Dale charges with all his might against the legendary giant. With a swift and precise slash, he manages to wound the creature's leg with his sharp blade. The blow leaves a deep gash on the monster, which feels the pain of the brave knight's attack. At this, the legendary giant lets out a roar of pure pain and fury from the wound it received. Just then, Captain Peleus exploits the opening and attacks the monster's head in a coordinated assault. With a battle cry, the blonde knight tells his men to leave the rest to him in this battle. He then stomps hard on the ground, using the momentum to launch himself toward the stone giant. The captain soars through the air in a swift motion, preparing for the finishing blow on the creature. With his sword in hand, he prepares for an aerial attack as the monster roars in fury. With a determined look, the blonde knight faces his opponent and prepares the final strike in the fight. He then unleashes a powerful slash of blue energy that strikes the giant's face dead on. The monster snarls in pain as the captain's attack hits its eye with great force and precision. From the impact of the blow, the legendary giant's head is completely obliterated in the battle. The captain then lands safely on the ground as the monster's body falls, defeated. The other knights celebrate the victory, shouting that Peleus and Dale have finally defeated it. Angrily, they continue to strike the monster's body, calling it a disgusting and foul creature. Peleus then smiles at Dale, saying they can relax now, but his friend shakes his head in disagreement. With a serious look, the knight reveals that that was not the monster he was referring to. One of the knights praises Dale and Peleus, saying they are incredible for having won the fight. Another soldier celebrates, saying now they just need to dispose of the remaining giants. But suddenly, a giant hand crushes the body of the monster they had just defeated. An enormous shadow falls over the two, and Dale points upward, warning that that is the real monster. The celebrating soldier is terrified, shouting that this giant is on a completely different level. Meanwhile, our hero finally reaches the lightning fragment, and his progress hits 99%. With that, he finally grasps the sphere of energy, saying he will make the traitor apologize in the underworld. With a look full of hatred, he vows to take Kazuki's head as a souvenir of his vengeance. The protagonist then rises from the ground, completely enveloped by the golden energy of the lightning. An explosion of power occurs, and the lightning's energy spreads throughout the entire ice cave. His sword is now wreathed in lightning, and he has finally obtained the power he so desperately needed. With the sphere in hand and utterly exhausted, the young man wonders if this trial is finally over. But suddenly his eyes widen as he realizes something is still about to happen. His body is overloaded, and the system announces his meridians have been opened and his stats have increased. In immense pain, he clutches his head, complaining that if there's one more jolt, he won't be able to take it. Losing consciousness, he begs for at least a warning before being struck by the power again. The young man then collapses to the ground, and the system announces he has successfully passed stage 6. Far away, the agency's boss watches everything with a serious expression in his office. He stares at the screen, commenting that there's a limit to recklessness, and the young man has crossed it. With a sigh, the boss says it seems this young man wasn't cut out to be a real streamer. He then picks up his device and tosses it onto the table with a dry, somewhat frustrated thud. Just then, the boss receives a call from Hawkeye and says he was watching our hero's live stream. The analyst is incredibly excited, calling the young man a true star among stars. John finds him too harsh and more of a player than a streamer, but the blonde man completely disagrees. With a smile, he argues this is the concept viewers want, because the original was a player. He explains that the version of Subaru the audience wants to see is that of a genuine player. With this, the boss understands they are witnessing the birth of a new legendary player. His eyes shine with the revelation, realizing they are watching it all unfold in real time. Back on the live broadcast, our hero's hand lies limp on the icy floor of the cave. Slowly, the young man gets to his feet, and the chat celebrates that he's finally awake and still alive. With a determined look, he opens his eyes, ready to continue what he started in this place. But he feels his fatigue, realizing his body is still at its limit after the last trial. His fatigue has dropped to 81, and he's relieved as the last lightning jolt was unexpected. Several live stream missions are completed, and he receives thousands of credits as a reward for the achievement. With that, his credits rise to 20,420, and he's satisfied with the amount. He sees he needs 40,000 credits to upgrade his skill, but still doesn't have enough. He then wonders if he can earn the rest by defeating the giant and looks at the sphere in his hand. The item is a legendary lightning spear, and the live stream chat goes absolutely wild at the revelation. He thinks that a single, use item you wouldn't even see on the 8th floor is far too rare for this place. With a serious look, he agrees it doesn't resemble a spear and decides to use his credits differently. He explains that for high-rank items, the form can change based on conditions, and the chat praises his knowledge. With that, the masked man announces he is going to defeat it and exits the cave for the final battle of the trial. Back in the village, one of the knights panics, screaming desperately at the scene before him. The true chief emerges, and the giant King Greg glares at the knights with a look of pure malice. The creature throws its long white hair back, releasing an overwhelming pressure onto the battlefield. The monster then reveals its full form with a muscular body and a dark, powerful aura. The system identifies him as the giant King Greg, the seed that swallowed the thunder's own lightning. Pullus shouts for one of his men not to flee, but the knight panics and runs away in fear. Terrified, the young man says with a laugh that he told everyone they knew absolutely nothing. He then kneels before the giant, calling him a god and saying he is not like the other humans. With that, the soldier prostrates himself on the ground, begging the cruel giant monster for mercy. The creature looks down at him and, in a dark and intimidating voice, repeats the word God to the young man. The monster asks if he is comparing him to the other vile and filthy creatures he so despises. Dale then grabs him, ordering him to get up, but the young man continues to scream in pure terror. The knight then shouts for Pulis to take the villagers and run as far away as he can. With a determined look, the older knight prepares to sacrifice himself for the village and for everyone. Desperate, the captain screams his friend's name with all the strength he has left. But it's too late. The giant simply crushes the knight's body with its enormous hand. With a look of pure despair, Pulis admits he can see no path to victory here. But with a determined look, he realizes the only option remaining is an escape route. To his surprise, however, the escape route is also blocked by a horde of stone giants. With a look of pure despair, the captain doesn't know what to do, finding himself trapped. With clenched teeth, he faces the situation with frustration, seeing no chance of victory. Desperate, the captain shouts to the giant that he knows who took down his son to buy time. The giant king then stops, glaring at him with a serious expression, asking who was responsible. The monster glares at the blonde knight with its glowing eyes, repeating the question with more anger. With sweat streaming down his face, Pulis unsheathes his sword, preparing for what's next. With the tip of his sword glowing, he points toward the mountain, saying the culprit is there. He explains the human went there to gather strength and eliminate all the giants at once. With his sword pointed, he prays the giant will be deceived and head for the mountain. But with a serious and intimidating look, the creature declares that this is all a blatant lie. With a furious look, the monster questions if the human isn't right here, and if he just pointed to a random place. The giant then demands the knight answer immediately, or he will suffer the consequences. Suddenly, a golden lightning bolt splits the heavens, striking the mountaintop with incredible force. The captain is stunned by the light, and the monster stares at the phenomenon with a look of pure surprise. A mysterious silhouette then begins to form amidst the explosion of golden energy. With a shocked look, Pulis whispers the word, benefactor, and the system announces the start of Stage 7. From atop the mountain, our hero observes the battle, remarking that this will be the final challenge. He complains that if anything stronger appears, he can no longer call this a second-floor trial. With a determined look and his body wounded, he says it's alright and that he'll see this through to the end. He says he only needs to hit it once and uses his credits to upgrade one of his skills. With the sphere in hand, he knows his current self cannot win, but he must stop it no matter what. The young man then raises the sphere, and the system announces the initialization of the lightning spear has begun. A golden bolt of lightning shoots into the heavens as he prepares to use the legendary item's full power. A storm of golden lightning begins to brew in the sky, and dark clouds envelop the mountain. The energy concentrates, forming a vortex of power for our hero's final attack. With his arm raised, he controls the storm, and the system shows the initialization rate is at 10%. His fatigue climbs to 84, but he continues to charge the power of the lightning spear. The energy is so intense that the young man must use all his strength just to control it. The initialization rate reaches 33%, and he continues the process without giving up. With a cry of exertion, he holds the energy with his hand, preparing for the final attack. His skill attempts to resist the spear's recoil but fails. The resistance effect is too weak. With his body bleeding, he realizes his skill level is far too low to wield a legendary item. His fatigue climbs to 88, and the initialization rate reaches 50%. The live stream chat comments on the situation, saying the young man has been suffering ever since he learned the lightning skill. With a determined look, he continues to charge the power, even with his body at its absolute limit. He then realizes the giant has noticed his presence and stares back at it with a serious expression. With a confident smile, he admits it would be irrational to expect the monster not to notice. The initialization rate reaches 78%, and he prepares for the final attack. Back in the village, the giant king looks up at the sky and, in a dark voice, utters the word, lightning. With his foot on the ground, he finally understands that the one responsible for his son's end is the masked man. With a look of pure hatred, the creature advances toward the mountain for its final revenge. Palu shouts for the monster to stop, reminding it that he is its opponent in this mortal battle. But the giant simply ignores him, continuing on its path with a smirk on its face. Desperate, the captain cries out that the situation is dire, and the villagers are in danger from the monster's fury. With a sad expression, the giant gazes at the mountain and says his son's name, idle with regret. He says it must have been incredibly painful and prepares to avenge the end of his beloved son. Angrily, the monster stumps hard on the ground, feeling the pain his son felt in his final moments. The giant then unleashes its fury, and the ground cracks from the force of its devastating stump. He then prepares for a powerful attack to finish off our hero once and for all. With red eyes and a battle cry, he vows to return all the pain his son endured. The spear's initialization rate reaches 88%, and the young man prepares for the attack. With a leap, the giant monster advances toward the mountain with all its fury and power. The masked man faces the monster, saying the probability of hitting or missing is 50-50. With a determined look, he tells it not to look away and prepares for the final throw. A memory arises, a man telling him not to look away, no matter what happens. The man teaches him that the spear throw begins from that point and not a moment before. He advises him to eliminate unnecessary thoughts, like trajectory or predicting the target's movement. The master tells him to disregard the spear's weight and form and to focus only on the throw itself. With a smile, the man praises him, asking why he is so different from other spearmen. He then reveals the reason is because he is the one and only Subaru Narukami. Back in the present, the initialization rate reaches 95%, and he continues. With his eye glowing, he wonders what he should do and remembers his master's words. The man reminds him he won't be throwing a normal spear, but one of pure power and lightning. With a smile, he says the answer is simple, he shouldn't throw it, but rather explode the power. With that, the giant advances, and the masked man prepares for the final attack with all his might. The live stream chat panics, telling him to hurry, because if he hesitates, he will surely be finished. With a determined look, he thinks he just needs a little more time for the attack. The monster then readies a powerful punch, but the lightning's energy begins to affect it. The creature writhes from the energy, and our hero continues to charge the spear's power. With a battle cry, the giant advances with its fist wreathed in flames for a devastating attack. The young man then prepares for a counterattack, and the lightning's energy completely envelops him. The initialization rate finally reaches 100%, and he is ready for the attack. With the spear in hand and a determined look, he prepares for the final blow on the creature. With a serious and focused expression, he says he has only one chance and he will end this for good. The masked man then charges forward, preparing to launch the powerful lightning spear at the giant. With a swift and precise motion, he hurls the weapon with all his strength and power. The spear soars through the air at incredible speed, striking the giant squarely in the chest. With his eyes glowing gold, our hero watches the result of his powerful attack. The spear explodes with devastating power, striking the monster's head in a decisive blow. The giant's body is enveloped by the golden energy and is completely disintegrated by the attack. The explosion is so powerful that a massive shockwave ripples across the entire battlefield. In its final moments, the giant creature groans in pain, staring at the explosion that consumes it. With a final breath, the monster is finally defeated, its body vanishing in the golden light. The live stream chat goes wild, the viewers in disbelief that he actually managed to hit the target. The system announces he has defeated the seed that swallowed the lightning and successfully passed stage 7. He levels up, gaining several stats, 5,000 achievement points, and a new legendary item. The young man then wonders what the Heart of Lightning is, and the item materializes in his hand with an intense glow. With the crystal in hand, he grips it tightly, feeling the item's energy flowing through his body. Suddenly, he feels a sharp pain, and the item begins to glow with an even brighter light. Confused, the young man wonders what is happening as a tear escapes from his tired eye. He then finds himself in a strange place, questioning where he is and what has happened to him. A dark and mysterious silhouette appears before him, staring at him with its glowing eyes. With his body paralyzed, the young man cannot move or speak, and he panics at the situation. He feels his body is heavy and can do nothing but stare at the figure before him. Several system messages warn that an unknown presence is watching him intently. With his face dirty and injured, the young man wonders if this thing is trying to tell him something. With the item in hand, he feels a powerful energy and grips it with all his remaining strength. An intense light then envelops him, teleporting him out of that mysterious and dark place. Alone on a cliff, our hero stares at the horizon with a thoughtful and determined expression. The system announces that the main scenario of the lightning is finally beginning for our hero. He then discovers he can find clues in the village using the Heart of Lightning he just obtained. With a rainbow in the sky, he wonders if that wasn't just an animated scene from the trial. He gets up and apologizes to the chat, saying he passed out for a moment, and the chat teases him. With his device in hand, the young man remembers he needs to accept the credits from the live stream missions. Several missions are completed, and his credits soar to over 40,000 at once. Tired, he tells the chat he'll see them next time and ends the live broadcast of the trial. With that, the system announces that our hero's live broadcast has officially ended. Far away in a coffee shop, Agent Hatsuka congratulates him on his excellent work in the tower's exam. He asks if the stream turned out that well, and she confirms it was absolutely perfect. With a smile, she reveals that the peak viewership reached 3,000, and he is quite shocked. He apologizes, saying he was focused on the exam, and the agent is surprised by his attitude. The woman praises him, saying that for a rookie, 3,000 viewers is incredible and that his timing was perfect. She then asks if he did that intentionally, and he replies that this is the part everyone is curious about. The masked man reveals he plans to check the rewards with the viewers to maintain a natural feel. The agent becomes smitten, thinking her boss's worries were completely unnecessary. With a smile, she leans across the table, saying she has a gift for him, and the young man is intrigued. The woman then reveals it is a special gift that he will surely be unable to refuse. With a mischievous smile and a seductive look, she repeats that it is a very special gift for him.